express my concerns regarding some of the library board employees and their clear connections to Montgomery. This issue is unfolding in both the state and local levels, and where they align with the agenda of anti-library extremist groups will infringe upon the rights of constituents who do not fully support their objectives, and result in defunding of libraries across the state. I want to begin by addressing the situation at the Montgomery Public Library. The president of what is now called Land of Alabama attended a city council meeting holding up genderqueer, an adult graphic novel. She falsely claimed that the book was in the children's section and targeted towards 8-year-olds, deliberately misleading the citizens of press. In reality, that book had never been in the children's section of any Alabama library. In fact, it wasn't even part of the collection at the Montgomery Public Library. If the intentions of Clean Up Alabama are truly pure, why begin with a lie? Clean Up Alabama and their sympathizers harassed librarians, city council, and the former library board to such an extent that some board members resigned. When the board chair was replaced with a Clean Up Alabama advocate, the remaining members also resigned, creating an opportunity for the board to be entirely filled with their own selection. Having the North Shelby Library is different, but shares the same end goal, stacking the board with individuals who align with anti-library extremist groups like Moms for Liberty and their allies at Clean Up Alabama. Previously, the library board was elected by community members who paid dues to use the library. However, a political representative stripped them of that right and took over the appointment process. The first pick was someone who had previously challenged even a small pride display in the library during the meeting. That same individual was appointed chair of the North Shelby Library and is now replaced on the state library board as well. This is not a coincidence. It is intentional and coordinated. Some members of the board are actively working with Moms for Liberty, and some even actively participate in Facebook groups. The board chair also appears to be sympathetic to their cause. This raises a serious question. Isn't this a clear conflict of interest? By aligning with anti-library extremist groups, these appointed officials are silencing the voices of countless constituents. They are turning what should be an apolitical institution into a political battleground to serve the interests of a select few and will ultimately put Alabama libraries at risk. This is not liberty, nor is it small government. It is an orchestrated effort to control and censor under the guise of public service and violate the First and 14th Amendment rights of Alabamians to access reading material for their children and remove and restrict books based on viewpoint discrimination.
All right, next we have Chris Warren.
Good morning. My name is Chris Warren. I'm the director of the Dothan County Library System, and I've worked in libraries for over 2 decades. I'm also serving in my 3rd term as a member of the LSTA Advisory Council, which I'm also currently the chair. I'm here to express my appreciation to you, the APLS Executive Board, for your decision back in November to reinstate the FY25 LSTA grant program as it was originally designed. What makes LSTA unique is that it allows libraries to apply for funds to address specific needs for their specific libraries and their specific communities, especially in small towns and rural areas. In fact, from 2010 to 2024, 108 libraries that serve populations of less than 10,000 applied for a total of 835 grants, of which nearly 700 were awarded. With the time I have, I'd like to share a few examples of these LSTA-funded projects. The McCain Memorial Library in Asheville serves a population of 9,304, and the Lineville Public Library serves a population of 2,407. Both libraries applied for and received grants to upgrade and replace obsolete computers. This allows these libraries to bridge the digital divide for their patrons, allows them access to employment opportunities, government resources, and a wide range of vital information that can change lives. Similarly, the Rainsville Public Library serves a population of 5,604, and the Mary Wallace Cobb Memorial Library in Vernon serves a population of 1,874. Both libraries have applied for and received LSTA grants to fund their summer reading programs, which is an essential program that supports academic achievement and student success with measurable research-backed results. Finally, the Grant Public Library serves a population of 1,040, and the Arley Public Library serves a 3-digit population of 330. Both libraries have applied for and received grants for collection development, in other words, books. To be clear, local funding for these libraries is so limited that without funding made available through LSTA, these libraries are not able to purchase any books at all. Now, I had originally intended to speak back in January following the on-again, off-again freeze on federal grants, which would have impacted LSTA. And just last week, the president issued an executive order effectively gutting APLS. If somehow this doesn't play out, and if somehow federal funds are still made available to IMLS and by extension to APLS and to our public libraries, I would urge you to stick with your decision to keep the grant program in place. Even with a shorter window for implementation, it is the consensus of the council that public libraries will still be able to carry out these important projects, all of which are informed by local needs and local priorities. I appreciate all of you for hearing our concerns, and I hope you will take these into account during your discussion later in today's agenda.
Since you're going to be asked to leave and may not be here, I do want to, especially if you represent your local library, state one, we're committed, we understand the needs. And I know I won't speak for the board here, but I'll speak for you as chairman. We were proud to make that decision in November. We understand this has to happen, local libraries want to support you. I also am very hopeful that this executive order will not actually affect the direct grant money in some of these states, just the federal department. If that's the case, hopefully it will not stop or pause funding. If that is the case, we definitely have to go with libraries department. Appreciate that. Thank you for your time. All right, next up is Lori Hearing. Not here. Carissa Gallen.
I do have handouts for after the meeting. That's okay. All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Carissa Callan. I'm from North Alabama. I have an MLIS degree from the University of Alabama, and I worked as a children's librarian in Huntsville before staying home to raise and homeschool my 5 children. Thank you for standing in the gap to redeem our libraries by passing the code changes last May that once again allow our children to safely explore and read in the children's areas of public libraries without coming across porn or smut. As you may know, some of the larger library systems are dragging their feet to comply. They brag about how many hours and how much money they have spent going through their collections. Pencil Madison said 2,200 hours and $59,000 so far. And yet, they still have sexually explicit books on the shelves. 2 of them are on this top 10 list from ALA, the most recent list, which is still 2023, still on the shelves for young adults. Why did the staff not start with a list like this or something similar to go through their collection? I attended their board meeting on Tuesday and asked for transparent insight into their review process. I was told they will share that information at their next board meeting in May. The library system needs to be held accountable for still having sexually explicit content on the shelves for minors. There's no excuse. While I've seen the push to groom and sexualize children, I have also seen a push for books that promote and normalize transgenderism and gender confusion in minors. Pencil Madison, for example, has had a tremendous influx of these books in the last 2 to 3 years, with no balance for the true mental condition of gender dysphoria. Instead, the shelves are filled with books like this one, Understanding Transgender. This book for juveniles advises teachers to, quote, use the student's new chosen name, while also withholding transitioning information from parents, that on page 26. And this board book, Together, A Conversation About Love, is anything but loving. It vilifies heteronormativity while promoting other beautiful relationships like ethical non-monogamy. It also normalizes bearded men in mermaid outfits and wedding dresses. There are over 190 books like this one for minors in Huntsville, Madison, and yet this book, not one copy. This is a beautifully illustrated, age-appropriate book about identity. It's not even on their electronic Hoopla system. So President Trump's executive order on this matter states that federal funds will be withheld from any public entity that continues to push this harmful transgender identity on minors. And last year, APLS received almost $3 million in federal grants. What's going to happen when you don't get the money this year? A recent study from University of Texas that followed over 100,000 transgender people found that, quote, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and substance use disorders were significantly higher among those who underwent surgery. And yet, these books are talking about that for children. The public library needs to get out of this obsession with gender ideology for kids that is literally maiming our next generation and return to settled science and the affirmation that children are perfect just the way God made them. Thank you for your time, and here's 2 handouts for everybody later.
Thank you. Next up, we have Alex Kim.
Am I supposed to be in group
All
one?
right. Samantha Webb.
Morning. My name is Samantha Webb. I'm a retired teacher, and I taught children's and young adult literature for 25 years at the college level. During my time picking children's books to teach Alabama teachers, I came to realize how important it is for children to be able to read widely and freely with the guidance of their parents. Allowing all parents, together with their children, to freely choose the books they want to read is the best way to ensure that everyone enjoys the protections of the First Amendment. Restricting people's access to books by banning certain purchases for libraries, or singling out books for removal, or silencing librarians from making recommendations, or withholding funding from libraries deemed non-compliant flies in the face of the First Amendment. It also fails to protect parents' rights. Because as we all know, what's right for one reader will not be right for another, what's right for one family may not be right for another. One family's freedom to read protects another family's freedom to read, even if their tastes and philosophies are diametrically opposed. And it seems to me that some people here today want to have the final say about what is or is not harmful to minors, and what should and should not be included in public library collections. They would replace the opinions of local parents with their own. And this is viewpoint censorship disguised as concern for minors. It is not appropriate for this board to take direction only from Moms for Liberty and micromanage what books go into library collections. And I want the board to know that there are people out here who disagree with this group and with Clean Up Alabama. We don't want our library collections controlled by censorious interest groups. We want them to remain in the hands of professional librarians who meet the needs of the entirety of their local communities. It would be egregious government overreach for this board, working with Moms for Liberty and Clean Up Alabama, to determine what books may or may not be purchased for public libraries, adjudicate book challenges, and determine what content does or does not comply with vaguely worded rules. Librarians are well-trained readers of books. They know the difference between an adult book and a book that, while it might not be to everyone's taste, has artistic or informational merit and meets the needs of their patrons. Let them do their jobs without undue government interference, and let all parents, not just a select few, determine what's best for their kids.
Alex. Chairman, I would just file.
Sorry. I won't take too much time on it. But,
Which we value those, even if you're.
So what I wanted to address, I was looking at the APLS homepage, which I noticed has changed quite a bit over the past few months. Obviously, a lot of stuff has changed. And I noticed the APLS homepage says, the Alabama Public Library Service provides leadership, resources, and programming to support Alabama public libraries in providing quality library service throughout the state. And that the ultimate goal of the APLS is to create a statewide network of libraries to provide outstanding library service to every individual in the state. We've already mentioned APLS, so I won't get into that, although there is something to be said about what happens to the APLS if the APLS money gets cut. I also saw on the APLS Board of Directors page, the board's responsibilities include maintaining and making provisions to the Alabama Administrative Code, which we've seen, advocating for public libraries and their funding, and serving as an advisory body for the APLS long-range plan. Also notice the advocacy page now lists only the IMLS as a national and local advocacy resource, no ALA obviously, but also no local professional associations such as the Alabama Library Association or even the regional Southeastern Library Association. No other internationally or nationally recognized groups such as the Freedom to Read Foundation or the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. No citizen advocacy groups, nothing that actually resembles advocacy. There's a librarian at that table who has earned the title of doctor and who has been spoken over and belittled for doing her job, trying to explain what every public library worker does, and actually trying to advocate for that outstanding library service to every individual in the state. to deny her experience and the experience of the professionals and paraprofessionals who are doing work is an egregious act of hubris and slap in the face of the entire public the APLS proposes to serve. I would never presume to tell you how to do your job as account managers, butterfly farmers, or politicians, so all of these political agendas aside, I'm begging you, just do the job. Because if the APLS folds, it's not a far reach to expect the APLS to fold, and then our public libraries, and then where will we be on those education rankings that we're oh so proud of? Where will our workforce be when they can't access the internet to submit job applications, can't print their resumes, can't apply for unemployment benefits, all of which are things that I regularly help people with as a library worker. When all these jobs and program services evaporate. I'm begging, just think about the long plan. Stop holding public libraries hostage to the agenda. Don't give up on us.
Next up is Julie Freeland.
Yes.
My name is Joyce Cleveland, I'm from Jefferson County. Sex is a funny word. This is a comic book located in the children's department. So a librarian made that choice with all of their experience and knowledge to put this in front of my children. I'm not part of those two organizations. I'm a grandmother with 5 grandchildren under 10 years old. This book teaches about masturbation, gender identities, and sexuality. It includes full nudity images of males and females, including an image of someone spreading a labia and exposed vulva. Illustrations depict the implications of male and females masturbating. On one page, a young girl is masturbating at a picnic table with an older woman watching. The book states, "You may have discovered that touching some parts of your body, especially in middle parts, can make you feel warm and tingly. Grown-ups call that masturbation." The book also encourages anal play, stating that, like other holes in our body, the anus is usually very sensitive, which means that it feels good to touch and can also hurt if you're rough with it. The book also tells children they may not be the gender that they were assigned at birth. Maybe you're called a boy, but you know you're a girl. Maybe you're called a girl, but you know you're a boy. Maybe you aren't sure. Maybe you don't feel like a boy or a girl. Maybe you feel like both. Part of being a kid is just learning what you like and what you don't like and who you are. How could anyone tell a child that they are both sexes at the same time? Because there are many books like these, I am here to request that our Alabama Public Libraries be in compliance with President Trump's executive order stating that federal funds not be used to promote gender ideology, gender identity, which includes transgenderism. Each agency shall assess grant conditions and ensure grant funds do not promote gender ideology. Alabama state law, which is what is the Woman Bill, states that Alabama recognizes only 2 sexes, male and female, and is codified into our laws. In order to receive federal grant funds, I'm asking you to send a letter to the library directors requiring that they remove all books, ebooks, DVD, fiction, and nonfiction that are not in compliance with the President's executive order and state law, and that libraries are prohibited from buying this confused literature in the future. These books can easily be identified by using the card catalog. Because this is a presidential executive order and definitions are codified into state law, the traditional process of completing a book challenge form and taking the books to the library board should not be required. Furthermore, this removal should override library policies stating that a book cannot be reviewed again if it's challenged previously. We, the people in this room, you guys, and all of us are responsible for creating this confusion with our children and grandchildren if we allow these books to continue to be in the libraries and not put up a fight. God help us in have mercy on us.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Next
Julie.
up is Sheila Wright.
I'm Sheila White from Huntsville, Alabama. First, I would like to thank you for making changes to the administrative code last year, which was a good start to making our public libraries a safer place for children and teens. For the libraries that aren't in compliance with these new changes, I ask that you hold them accountable now by withholding funds, but there's more work to be done. The transgender movement is pressing its agenda everywhere, with activist teachers, healthcare professionals, clergy, library directors, and staff, and others. In the late 1980s, a group of academicians established the disciplines of queer theory and transgender studies. They denounced the traditional categories of man and woman as a false binary and promoted transgenderism. If men can become women and women men, they believed the natural structure of creation could be toppled. In other words, they thought they could discredit Genesis 1:27, which states, "So God created man in his own image. Male and female he created them," which is the foundational ethical imperative for all Western civilization. An example of a book in our public libraries that promotes this agenda is Being You, a first conversation about gender. It is a board book for children, which includes toddlers. The authors state that it's never too early to begin the conversation about gender. Contents include page 11 and 12. It is okay to wonder, am I a girl? Am I a boy? Am I both? Am I neither? There's no right or wrong answer, and it is okay if your answer changes. Page 21. For a long time, many people have said and believed untrue things like, you are either a boy or a girl. With books like this on our shelves of our libraries, no wonder our children are confused. In 2007, America had one pediatric gender clinic. Today, there are hundreds. The truth is that no matter how advanced transpharmaceuticals and surgeries become, the biological reality of man and woman cannot be abolished, and the natural limitations of God's creation cannot be transcended. In order to be in compliance with President Trump's executive order on gender ideology and the Alabama state law, What is a Woman Bill, which recognizes only two sexes, male and female, I'm asking you to require all library directors to remove all books and DVDs, children and adult, fiction and nonfiction, that promote gender ideology, gender identity, and transgenderism. I am also asking that our public libraries be prohibited from purchasing any of these books and DVDs in the future. And this is the book, Being You, in the children's area. Thank you.
Next up is Leslie Johnson.
I'm Leslie Johnson, and I'm from Birmingham. And I also want to thank the board for last year making the decision to draft the code from our libraries. You know, that pornography is a state fact that pornography hinders the frontal lobe development for children. For that protection. In this country and around the world, we have sexual confusion, moral confusion, gender confusion. Satan is the author of confusion. Libraries around the state possess a lot of books on this subject, which is an attempt to indoctrinate our children and adults. I currently have books checked out of 3 libraries in the Jefferson County system that promote transgenderism. These include the Hoover, the Vestavia, and the Denson libraries. In addition, there are many, many moral shelves at the Mount Hope and Homewood libraries. Transgenderism is not a normal behavior. Prior to 1972, all sexually deviant behavior outside of a normal heterosexual God-ordained relationship, their behavior was considered mentally ill and disturbed. So in the last 50 years, a lot of that has changed in this country. And this was in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. We have books that are promoting this transgender behavior, starting from infancy. This is one of them. I found in Children's section at the Vestavia Hills Alabama Library by binary. There is also another book on maps. In this book, it states that sometimes kids are born one gender and their parents assign it to them but sometimes their parents make mistakes. Also wanted to say that I feel like this country is in a rebellion against the truth. The rejection of the truth that a man is a man, a woman is a woman, after we get to this point. Maybe it's because for the last 50 years we're saying that a baby is not a baby. The radical rejection of truth, when we look at transgender insanity, is to deny the simple biological fact that a man is a man, a woman is a woman. God did create us in his image. Genesis 1:21. And finally, let me just say, I too want to stand with the fact that our own president has just admitted as an executive order that we recognize two genders in the whole country. He's basically returning us to common sense. Common sense is what is a woman? So, since Alabama does receive $3 million a year, we need to be in compliance with our national government and our state government. So, I too am asking the public library to remove prohibited items and purchasing any of these picture entities in the future.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you. Next up is Laura Person. All right.
This will be the last speaker in this group. If you still don't know what group you're in, come see me, and group 2 get ready. As soon as they leave, you guys will go in.
Good morning. I just want to start off saying thank you. Thank you for the changes. Thank you for protecting our children from sexually explicit materials. And let's continue doing better and protecting those children. I have a son. He's young, and he's starting to play sports now and stuff. Like any old, normal kid. And let's just say he comes home and says, "Mom, there's a sport I want to try. It's so cool. Everybody's talking about it. It's super popular. Celebrities are talking about it. Like, it's so cool." I'm like, okay, well, if you want to do this, let's do this. I encourage my son, to do what he wants to do. But then upon me researching this sport, I find out that 41 to up to 59% of participants will die. Do you think that I'm going to have my son participate in this sport? The answer is absolutely not. And any sane parent would say absolutely not. So why do we treat transgenderism differently? Transgenderism has a suicide rate of 41%, to now we're saying it's up to about 59%. And we're not, they'll left to scream, oh, it's because we don't accept, well, if we don't accept them. That has been debunked, because the majority of these suicides happen about 8 to 10 years after transition. Like Carissa mentioned, there's also been that new study that came out from the University of Texas that stated that basically those who had transitions were more suicidal than before. So the reality here, and again, this isn't emotion, these are facts. Transgenderism is not only a dangerous ideology, but it's deadly. So we have Trump's Executive Order 14168. I'm asking the APLS to please honor that. Not just because, it's political or whatnot, but literally, this ideology is dangerous and deadly. Do we know who John Money is? John Money is the father of gender ideology. If you don't know who he is a disgusting doctor who experimented on children. And there was a set of twins in the 60s that he experimented on. It was twin boys. One boy had a botched circumcision. So Dr. Money went to this family and preyed upon their vulnerable state and said, let's just raise this boy as a girl. And within this journey, the boys were sexually abused. They were forced to perform sexual acts on each other. The whole story is absolutely disappointing. The twin who had the botched circumcision, David Reimer, when he found out that he really was a man, obviously he went right back, denounced everything. He's like, I'm not part of this, and he lived the rest of his life as a man. You can see his stories on Oprah, it's been all over. Unfortunately, he killed himself.
And not only did he kill himself, his twin did as well. So this ideology is dangerous and it's deadly. Let's get it out of the hands of the people of Alabama. Thank you.
Amen.
Group two, go ahead and be making your way up to the boardroom. While they're getting ready for the next group, I know a lot of these topics are emotional for different people for different reasons, but technically, we're an extension of the boardroom, so if you would do it in the boardroom, we're not allowed to do it in the boardroom. You really can't do it in here, so let's keep on. You know, I know a lot of people's talking amongst themselves, we need to separate that, so everybody can hear.
Second group's supposed to go now.
Yes, ma'am.
First up, and welcome all, come on in. First up to address the board is Tanya Stolten.
Stolten.
You have the floor.
Thanks.
And we're, for those who read in, and we very much are excited about if you can take time off of that, but you have to. Thank you so much.
All right, I want to start off by saying that I believe that every consenting adult has the right to live their life however they see fit, as long as they don't have to hurt other people to do it. That's where I'm coming from with all of this. Talking to you today for a couple of reasons. First, to thank you for everything you're doing to prevent the sexualization of children through our public libraries. Our efforts appear to have been successful. Because the Huntsville-Madison County Library Board has committed to moving adult material into the adult section where it belongs. We've stood in front of our library boards and our city councils and our county commissions and twisted ourselves into knots to avoid breaking public indecency laws when we read things that children were being encouraged to consume. But there is what appears to be a well-organized, well-financed group of people determined to keep this stuff in front of children. And we want to make sure that our leadership doesn't give in to all the pressure that's being put on them by these groups. For the most part, I'm very encouraged with the effort our library board has made. When I check the card catalog online, it looks like they're really trying to comply. When I look up the books I've read from our leadership, books so disgusting they get me the all overs. Authors like Ellen Hawkins now have adult phone numbers. But then I find this book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and it still shows the young adult designation. I just wonder how many parents know what's in these books. This one contains kids getting drunk and stoned on weed and LSD, having sex, and using hot dogs as sex toys. When we consider how drug-related deaths among kids have skyrocketed in recent years, we realize this is not just improper, it's dangerous. It's a really sad commentary that at first I wasn't even going to talk about this. At least I reasoned to myself, this book doesn't have instructions on how to get on Grindr and hook up with strangers, or how to carry out just about every sexual fetish there is, or how to build characters who drink the menstrual blood of teenage girls. But it's still no good. How do descriptions of how fun it is to get loaded and have sex help kids? And it's a shame, because otherwise this is a really sweet book about good friends and family, helping a mentally ill 15-year-old to heal. I'll never understand why these kids' authors feel the need to ruin a good thing with a bunch of unnecessary stuff that kids shouldn't be reading. Another example of this is a book called Melissa by Alex Gino. It's about a fourth grader who hates his body so much that he can't stand to look at his own penis in the bathtub. Kids will read this book and interpret any discomfort they feel with their bodies, which is a common complaint of anyone with a growing body, as gender dysphoria and be encouraged to undergo non-reversible treatments with permanent physical and mental repercussions. The hormone treatment suggested in this book, which are the same chemical castrators given to sex offenders as part of their sentencing, cause permanent damage to a developing body, such as osteoporosis, sterility, and loss of all sexual drive. These drugs have been banned in many European countries as more long-term studies come in. Children should not be making decisions that will turn them into permanent medical dependence at any time before adulthood. At a time when suicide and self-loathing among young people are through the roof, is this a wise topic to be introducing to kids? The books I described above would still be available to children if our citizens hadn't noticed them and fought for years to get them moved, with the exception of this book in Melissa, which is currently designated young adult. So the second reason I'm here today is to let everybody know that we're not going to get complacent. There's too much at stake, we have to stay vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you.
They have asked that group three go ahead and go to the boardroom and go in because I think they want to keep things moving.
Hello, my name is Tabitha Eisner. I am the vice chair of the Alabama Democratic Party. the opportunity to speak today. Libraries exist because civilizations have always recognized the value of information and ideas. Information has not always been accessible to the masses, and when the masses didn't have access to information, the elite hoarded the information for themselves, sharing only the parts that made them more powerful, hiding away information and ideas that might lead to uprisings and revolutions. The people in power who did not want their power to be questioned labeled books as radical and dangerous because those were afraid of the people they ruled. The elite were afraid that if people learned new ideas, learned critical thinking, learned that conformity isn't inevitable, they would rise up and form a new base of power. And sure enough, revolutions do happen, including the Protestant Reformation, French Revolution, and the American Revolution. I'm proud to be an American. Proud that we were founded by people who saw the value of a diversity of ideas, who saw the dangers of a king, who placed freedom of speech and belief as the very first enumerated right. America has changed its mind on a lot of things over the years. We've supported slavery and rejected it, supported sexism and then rejected it, supported abortion and then rejected it. We have had many battles of ideas in this country, and they have made us stronger, not weaker. I'm aware that right now, ultra-conservative ideas are on the rise. That's a lot of history. While I disagree, I respect that each American has the right to hold such beliefs and to express them freely. Those of us who are in the minority are not entitled to political power. However, we are entitled to hold these beliefs, and we are entitled to write, publish, and read books that include our beliefs. And we're entitled to read them to our children. While you are entitled to put the chair of the Alabama GOP on this board, you are not entitled to impose GOP ideology on all Alabamians. I understand you're scared of our ideas and perspectives, scared they're catching on, scared that culture is changing. It's okay to have those big feelings. But let us agree that the value of our ideas must be argued on a fair playing field. Let us debate these ideas as Americans with the right to differing opinions. Let us make all ideas available in libraries and let people read what they want to read. If your ideas are in fact better and our ideas are in fact terrible, let people choose your ideas over ours. Let the people choose. If your ideas are better, let them win on their merit. Only tyrants are afraid of influence.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Luna.
I am here today utilizing my First Amendment right protected under the Constitution. This gives every person in this room the right to speak whether or not you agree. Liberty is another right that the Constitution grants, and the only requirement is that you are a United States citizen. Liberty, by definition, is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's right to life, behavior, or political beliefs. So we as Americans are legally allowed to freely pursue our own interests and preferences, and this extends to our literature and to our children. These rights follow our children into any public institution. They have the right to information and to choose. It is a fact, and as a parent, it is your job to be present. If you don't know what your children are reading, that is a you problem. You cannot hold librarians or the government personally responsible for your lack of parenting. This has never been about protecting Alabama's children from sexual content in literature, because if it were, then sexually explicit and sexual obscenity would be defined in the legislation. This is a hate campaign led by hateful people trying to silence a marginalized group of citizens because they don't agree with their way of life. But their way of life is protected under the Constitution. The wording was purposely left vague because if it were defined in literature categorized as LGBTQ+, pregnancy challenge. This would ruffle the feathers of Queen of Alabama and Moms for Liberty. Moms for Liberty is a known extremist group who have aligned themselves with neo-Nazis, white supremacists, are documented quoting Hitler and sympathizing with them. But because of our First Amendment, they're allowed to run around reading their dangerous rhetoric, and they are a direct threat to our children. And our question is, why is it okay for them to be able to freely exercise their constitutional rights, but we are here today fighting for the rights of our children and the rights of a marginalized group who pose no threat? This extremist group has infiltrated Alabama's public institutions with armies of their own creation, using bullying and intimidation to force librarians to remove LGBTQ plus content, all the while saying it's sexual stuff they're trying to say to children's brains. Meanwhile, they have the backing of an anti-library extremist who I will refer to as they, them, and not pronouns, right here. They not only hold a publicly elected office, they hold a position on this board. They are allowing this extremist group to name drop and hold public funding over the heads of whoever does not comply. Ladies and gentlemen, this is small government overreach at its finest. If you want to strip Alabama's children of their constitutional rights, silence a marginalized group of citizens who are elected to protect, align yourself with an extremist group, and back a hate campaign. Don't hide behind the extremist group. Don't disrespect the people of Alabama. Don't be a coward, Mr. Chairman. Stand up and say it was a jest.
Thank you. All right, next up is Chelsea.
Carlson. That's me. Fellow student members of the board, I'm Chelsea Carlson. I'm a mother of three, an avid reader, a military spouse, a former educator with a master's certificate in Catholic school leadership, and an outfit for arts ed. I call this on your own. When COVID hit and vaccines were deemed necessary for the well-being of the country, anti-vaxxer groups like Moms for Liberty said, we don't work here with the government. Mind your own. While looking around for places to live, we were warned about the Montgomery public school system, and I was alarmed to discover there are no homeschool requirements for the state of Alabama. But when it came to my children's education, and since I have the option to send them to the school on base, I was met with mind your own. Having worked in education at a private school, where lunches were subsidized for everyone, I recognize how invaluable food is for our children. 1 in 4 children are food insecure in the state of Alabama, but they give free lunches and schools is scoffed at and considered frivolous. To solve the problem, politicians tell every parent to mind your own. While watching Montgomery whitewater be built in my backyard, I wondered if that was the best investment of $90 million when the state is ranked 45th in education and 44th in healthcare. But when it comes to what's best for the city and for legacy, the governor has told every taxpayer to mind your own. Gun violence is becoming the leading cause of death for children, surpassing motor vehicle accidents in some states. But as a gun owner with school-aged kids, in regards to guns, I was told to mind your own. As a mother of young children, I utilized a preschool time at the Prattville Library when the board fired the director over censorship, and as a result, we lost the beloved librarians who facilitated those programs. Then months later, the library was closed due to a costly foundation issue. Strange how they could easily finance millions for a whitewater park, but couldn't figure out how to open the library and fix it for almost half a year. But it's not my job and not my money, so mind your own. As I stand here today looking at the board that dictates funding for libraries across the state, I'm confused as to why you want to limit access to books when Alabama is 44th in literacy. The reality is that kids of privilege will still have access to these materials, whether on the internet or at bookstores. I take issue when a small group dictates the appropriateness of reading material available and then utilizes a chairman who is easily swayed with feelings over facts. You're telling me that books are a bigger threat to children than food insecurity, lack of healthcare, substandard or non-existent education, or better yet, guns. And I agree with you, because knowledge is power. And this is a systematic way to take power and resources from the people who need it the most. When it comes to dictating what my kids can read or have access to, I agree with Moms for Liberty when they claim they don't co-parent with the government. And I don't co-parent with groups like Moms for Liberty because they're a little too liberal when it comes to my rights. And all I have to say to you is mind your own, and you should read more.
Thank you. Next up is Hayden Howell.
Time today. I wanted to address the concerns that a lot of people have had at this time, especially with like some state and government programs being cut. It's logical that we're concerned about public library funding being cut next. People don't know who to trust or who has their back, but I know for sure that the libraries always have mine. I grew up in a lot of places, but the one thing that remained consistent was my parents' frequent use of the public library. I was homeschooled, and we struggled to purchase curriculum and couldn't afford internet until 2011. We pretty much depended on the public library for everything. Not to mention it gave me the opportunity to actually read literature, fiction, anything that I could get my hands on when I was little. My My education and life would have suffered if I didn't have that access. Today, I work full-time for Birmingham Waterworks, and I'm partnering students studying my biology to continue my work here. If I didn't have access to any of these materials when I was young, and even now, I would not be here. It's important for the generation after me to not have unnecessarily restricted access to literature. And I hope that the board will fight against any attempt from higher powers to enforce unjust measures against any literature containing diversity themes. Access to these diversity materials, whether fiction, important history, or educational content, is necessary for the development of young minds and critical thinking skills. There are many here today who advocate for the silencing of diversity through the disguise of protecting children from so-called indoctrination. But I'll say that the silencing of controversial science, opinions, and lived experiences is a disturbing symptom of discrimination, not protecting against indoctrination. We cannot silence freedom of speech to those outside of the so-called box. Otherwise, we are silencing a young boy or young girl's freedom to think outside of that box, whether that box is like anything they could think of. These are where our tech advancements, our medical advancements happen, for people to think outside the box. Many books that describe the Black experience, authors that are LGBTQ, would provide to communicate the existence of gender and sexuality differences is a deplorable action. Last time I checked, discrimination is wrong, and the 14th Amendment allows for these expressions. We cannot deem people who are not the norm exempt from freedom of any other author or person would have. America should be better than that, and that choice can start here with our public libraries. The board provides the public great service and dedication. I thank you so much for that, and your continuation to hear us. And I urge you to fight against any restrictions that are going to come your way from this administration, because we know it's coming pretty much. Please stand up for the continuation of funding books for students, because I know myself as a first year funding about that.
All right, next up is Caitlin Tyler.
I am a lifelong Alabamian, resident of District 6, and supporter of our state's public libraries. I believe our public libraries are vital community spaces for everyone. This includes LGBTQ plus people. This includes survivors of rape and sexual abuse. This includes parents who want to educate their families on things like human development and sexuality. Everyone. I'm deeply concerned about our state's public libraries being targeted by anti-library extremists like Moms for Liberty and Clean Up Alabama, as these extremist groups have already successfully lobbied to censor materials on these topics and others in my own local library. At North Shelby Library, which is less than 10 miles from my home, anti-library extremists have already stripped the rights of citizens and removed the library's long-held processes and procedures in order to institute their own warped agenda of hate and erasure. Some of these same individuals are now sitting on the state board, where they will no doubt continue their campaign to trample our constitutional rights on an even larger scale. The appointment of these extremists to this APLS board is appalling. And it is clear that there is an agenda of collusion between some members of this board in order to stack the board with those who only conform to a fascist ideology. Voices of opposition are so oppressed that there is no public contact information for any member of this board. And so here I am, driving 200 miles on a Thursday morning to implore those of you on the board who believe in equal representation, freedom of speech, and constitutional rights to hold firm to your values and stop this perversion of democracy.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Martin.
Thank you for having me. My name is Beth Martin. I'm a retired teacher and children's minister. And I live in Springfield. I serve as a children's minister in Trussell. In the 18th chapter of Matthew, the disciples asked Jesus who would be the greatest in heaven. Jesus called over a child, set him in the middle of the group, and said in verses 3 through 6, "Verily I say unto you, except you turn and become as little children, You shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever shall receive one such little child in my name receives me. But whoever shall cause one of these little ones that believe in me to stumble, it is better for him that a great millstone should be hanged about his neck than if he should be sunk in the depth of the sea. Further down in verse 10, the Bible says, see that you despise not one of these little ones, for I say unto you, that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father who is in heaven. As a retired teacher and children's minister, I have seen the slow destruction of childhood innocence. Our children are bombarded on all sides by violent and sexually explicit movies, music, video games, and now we're seeing this even enter our schools and our public libraries. Children need time to grow and mature in safe, morally clean environments. They're not physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually ready to make decisions that will affect their lives for 60 to 70 years. I've seen firsthand teenagers trying to fit into groups with the latest fad or fashion. Those that feel left out will turn to any group, especially one they think will accept them, if they think they're being loved no matter the price. I've seen the ideas of transgenderism and same-sex relationships destroy family relationships, friendships, and then when the ideas lead to action, it destroys the individual, often leaving them into a dark place from which they feel is no escape. Darker and darker actions and thoughts often lead to deepening mental health issues and even suicide. I have to ask the question, given the warning that Jesus gave his followers, do we as leaders in our communities, the government, and as leaders in our churches, homes, and neighborhoods want to be found guilty of causing even one innocent child to stumble? I truly believe that it is time we take back our neighborhoods, schools, and libraries. These need and must be places of safety where children can be children, boys can be boys, and girls can be girls, where they are free to reach their full potential, free of the need to make adult decisions and not be pressured by those with other agendas that lead to confusion, harm, and untruths. I realize that we live in America with the freedoms to make our choices as responsible adults and take those consequences as adults. I understand I will not always agree with decisions that other adults may make or the lifestyles they choose to live. But just as with other adult literature, movies, and activities, sexual and transgender materials do not belong in the hands nor in the easy reach of our children. The idea of recreating sexual and transgender materials into a child's language and age-appropriate language script is just a way to try to groom and corrupt our children into thinking that transgenderism and sexual activities outside the confines of marriage is acceptable and normal, when nothing could be further from the truth. These types of materials in any form in the hands of minor children, including teenagers, are just simply not educationally, developmentally, cognitively, or age appropriate. When are we going to say enough is enough? We have bowed down long enough to the notion of not hurting someone's feelings or taking to personal freedoms. Ask yourself if you are okay with corrupting.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Amanda Ennis.
So sorry. Thank you. This is Charlie, by the way. So I'm taking a little bit of a different approach today than everyone else. I didn't get the memo on what I was supposed to speak about. But I just wanted to talk about, first of all, thank you for everyone in this room, whether you're on my side or on the other side, because you really care about children and you care about libraries in San Alabama. And that is so important. I just wanted to encourage you as we consider all sides of every argument to keep funding up our libraries. So many of them, oh gracious, me and my mom's talking. So many of them really depend on the funds that they get, because as one of our speakers earlier said, so many of them are so small. I was raised here in Alabama. I went down and played with schools. I graduated from two public universities in Alabama. I am white. I am a educator, and I am Mama Charlie here, who has her opinions. I'm passionate about the opportunities our public libraries are already providing my daughter, and I'm passionate about the opportunities we provided myself. A little bit about my background: I never met my father. Not even once, not to this day, 35 years on. My mom was in and out of my life, and I don't need to tell you guys that those statistics for outcomes are not great. But I did have grandparents who wanted to give me the best possible life, and that started in the Towson Public Library. My grandfather came out of the 8th grade. My grandmother dropped out of the 9th when she got married at 14. Both of them struggled to read, but they knew it was important for me. And they carried me to the library multiple times per week for my entire childhood. When I was in the 5th grade, I out-tested the STAR test. I was testing at over a 12th grade reading level. That's not a public grad. That is a testament to our public libraries. I was able to go on and score well in testing, make high GPA, get offers from numerous universities. Of course, I chose Auburn University here in Alabama, and then at UAB. This was all possible with the public library, and particularly a small public library. She obviously has some opinions, but I'm just going to wrap up this Saturday, she and I are going to look at Hampton Morgan Library downtown to hear a reading of a music performed by the Montgomery Symphony Orchestra. This is going to be her first experience with live music and orchestra instruments, and hopefully she's a little bit she is a baby. So I'm asking you, as you hear all these sides, please do not have fun in libraries. Please make me a stop. Thank you so much for all of your time. Thank you. And thank you guys for letting Charlie in.
All right, next up is Sarah Sanchez. All right. Ms. Bradley.
She's here.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. Just leave it up there.
Thank you all for letting us speak today. My name is Sarah Sanchez, and I'm the assistant to the director for Clean Up Alabama. And I just want to thank the members of this board for making changes to the APLS code that protects our children from encountering inappropriate materials in the children's sections of the libraries. Parents, constituents, and grassroots efforts made it clear last year that Alabamians want to protect childhood innocence when it comes to the books and resources that we offer our children in our libraries. The code changes were pretty clear. They stated that inappropriate books like gender identity, sexual orientation, and similar themes, transgenderism, and sexually explicit content should not be purchased or acquired in the library at all if they are geared, advertised, targeted, marketed to minors. None of these books with inappropriate themes or sexually explicit content should be located in the minor section of the library. And libraries must establish minor cards, borrowing cards for children under 18 that restrict access to the adult content, and parents must give approval for their child to check out adult materials. This is being implemented successfully in many of our public libraries across the state. However, there are some exceptions. And I know, as we've already heard today, there are some libraries that are still cataloging books in the young adult, children's sections, and I'm not sure that all of the library card procedures have been implemented across the board with all of those libraries either. Last night, I did go ahead and find some screenshots of, just to jog me up on here, of books that are currently still able to be checked out in the children's sections of the library. You saw the Sex is a Funny Word book. That is still in juvenile nonfiction at Fairhope. Boy Toy, which is a book about a 12-year-old boy that has a sexually explicit affair with a married woman. I believe she's his teacher. It's lots of graphic detail. that is cataloged in teen fiction at Fairhope. We have Beyond Magenta, which has pedophilia and inappropriate content for minors, is in teen fiction or teen nonfiction in Fairhope. We have Tricks by Ellen Hopkins. This is a story about some teens that are being trafficked. There is an explicit scene of intercourse in this book, and this is at Fairhope, cataloged in teen fiction. We also have in Huntsville, Madison, Beyond Magenta is cataloged, it is in the young adult nonfiction. Last Night's Telegraph Club has graphic lesbian scenes of intimacy, and that is at the downtown branch of Huntsville, Madison in young adult fiction. We have Trans Plus with Love, Sex, Romance, and Being You. I have a packet with information from this particular book. It is in the teen nonfiction at Pelham, and it's not appropriate for minors. So those are just some examples of books that I just pulled up last night. There's many others that this is being implemented efficiently, apparently, across the board. I'm a mom. I don't get paid to any of this. I have 4 kids to homeschool. And so this is totally a volunteer effort, and I have time to go and find this stuff. So I think our experts and our professionals can do that as well. And we expect them to. And I think it will come down to leadership from the top, that when the leadership in our libraries across the state, all the way down, is committed to enforcing the code and helping libraries implement it, I think we'll see some changes. I just want to get back to what was shared earlier, that this is really about protecting our kids. It's not about some debate back and forth where we can run off each other. My debate's more logical than yours. I mean, I think mine's more logical, but this is about childhood innocence. Time. All right.
Thank you. All right, next up is Jacqueline Bretman.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Bradley Palmer. There are 2 last names in it. But thank you for having me here. And I am from Birmingham, Alabama. And I tried to do a little bit of research, and when I looked up how many transgender books were in the Jefferson County Library, the latest figure was 864. Now, I don't know if that's changed any since the executive order, but that's the latest figure I have. I did go to the Mount Brook O'Neill Library just to cruise through the children's section. And I didn't have a lot of time, but just with the short amount of time I had, I did come across books such as Growing Up Trans in Our Own Words, A Child's Introduction to Pride, The Inspirational History and Culture of the LGBTQ plus community, Rainbow Allies, The True Story of Kids Who Stood Against Hate, The Everybody Book, the LGBTQ Inclusive Guide for Kids About Sex, Gender, Bodies, and Families, I'm Not a Girl, Born Ready, The True Story of a Boy Named Penelope, True You, A Gender Journey. And there were other books that I didn't have time to get to, but clearly they were right there in the children's sections. And just to preface what I have to say, I am all for freedom of speech for everyone, and I am for freedom of content in libraries. But I do think that there is an important distinction between freedom of content in the adult section and then what you put into the children's section. And unfortunately, we no longer have an age innocence for children, it seems like, anymore. I'm thankful I grew up when I did have an age of innocence. I wasn't weighed down with all of these political, social, ideology concerns. I was able to be a child and to play and to not be weighed down with all of what a lot of it is confusion on that. And I do know that they are trying to indoctrinate our children as early as kindergarten to question their gender, that if Bobby were to play with Barbie, he's questioned as to whether he's really a boy. If Sally wants to play with the tractor, she maybe questions to whether children go through these phases. It's always been natural for growing up for girls to be tomboys, maybe for guys to lean towards, and as a result, some do end up becoming gay, lesbians and gay, and that's.
Thank you. That finishes up our second group. Before you leave, I do want to highlight something. I know I did a pretty good meeting from some, and I welcome that comes with leadership. I do want to highlight something though. Before everyone in the room, one of my priorities for you that goes now in conversations is something that I grow in as a person. And I just can't really well. I appreciate every one of your efforts. I've learned from that. And it has actually been, for the board, with a new principle, always about ensuring that we take every single person who applies to speak. Because I want to hear voice. I want to hear every single person's perspective. And that is going to give us probably almost 2 hours of discussion here hearing these people. That has not been in the past. But that's why it's a priority. Because I do want to hear from you. I do care. So whether we hear or not, I very much appreciate you coming today, taking that time, being willing to speak, be part of that democratic process. I respect it. We may not agree, like I said, I respect you, and I think and that's priority for me. That's always be the case with my membership. If someone wants to speak, people out there, and if you want to call me, talk to me, I'm always available. So thank you all for that. And with that, we'll move on to the third group. Thank you all. The first up with the third group is Paul Brasher.
Hey, thank you for your time and thank you for listening. I'm a pastor, I'm a dad, I'm a granddad. And so I come from a lot of different perspectives and all, but the main thing I come from is the Word of God. You realize this book right here is the number one seller, all time. Do you realize this book right here is also the first textbook that we have in the United States? It's amazing. We've done well with it. In this book, you learn a lot of things. You learn truth. You learn how to do things and how not to do them. There's good examples and bad examples there, but it's all the truth, and God provided it for us. I want to just share a couple things. One, I don't come here, I don't like politics. I don't see this as politics for me, it's life or death. In Deuteronomy, it basically says that God says, I've set before you today blessings and curses, life and death. Choose life. And all through the scriptures, it tells us how to choose life. Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Anything other than truth and life is confusion. You see where I'm going on this, because Jesus called out Satan. He says Satan is the father of lies, and he's the author of confusion. And there's a lot of things that our children deserve, but there's a lot of things they don't deserve, and that's confusion. They need words to build them up, not to cause confusion. And I really want to just encourage y'all to push our library system to go in the order that's been from the very top down, from Trump to now to Alabama. And because with me, it is life or death. Over the last 12 years, I've had to do more funerals for suicides than I've ever had to do in my life. And many of them for children. A lot of them, I had to deal with 1 to 4 in the last 2 years. Young ladies cutting themselves because they tried all the things that was confusing out there. And the next thing you know, I'm counseling with families. And I'll be honest with you, it's hard work. It's hard work to teach a young person who's been on the internet, who's been in the libraries and gotten this kind of material. And it's very hard work to try to teach them who they are and whose they are. But when they get it, there's life again. Sad thing is, I had to do a funeral for an autistic young man who got caught up in some of it. Broke my heart. I just want you to know the things that we do as adults and all the various boards that we're on, they really have a life or death outcome. We've got to look at it that way. This book is true. It teaches everything from who we are, to whose we are, to what's going to happen in the future. And the thing that bothers me, I don't hate anybody. Sometimes we preachers get called haters and stuff. All I can do is tell you what the word says. But I do know that a day's coming where it says, okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up is Melissa Gates.
Hello, I'm from Mobile, Alabama. I'm trying to finish up what he said. There's going to come a time where we're all going to stand and be accountable for everything that we say and do, and it's going to be to the Lord Jesus Christ. So, whether you believe in Him or not, it's going to happen. Every knee shall bow, and every tongue will confess. So, I kind of thought maybe our library was cleaning up a little bit. That is not the case. So, I really don't to speak a whole lot about this book because my friend Julia has already done a fairly good job with us. But I'll reiterate that I'm a grandmother first and foremost. 3 babies, 4-year-old. It's my oldest. He can get his hands on this. This is horrible. I call it pornographic. And it makes me kind of question that if you want your children to see this kind of stuff, or it's grooming, it's child porn I'm just going to call it like I see it. This is awful. We don't need this for our children. Kind of thought maybe they pulled it off the shelf, talking about nipples and stuff. A 4-year-old. This is awful. About masturbation, playing with yourself in public. It's horrendous. This stuff has got to go. I don't even think it needs to be moved. I think it needs to be moved out of our library completely. And thank you, this current Trump administration agrees with us. This one, Melissa, it's already been talked about as well. Mobile Public Library. A 4th grader that's ashamed of his body, wants to be a girl, George to a girl, transgender, confusion. And you are made in God's image, whether you realize it or not. Beautifully and wonderfully made. Everyone is in His image. So we need to stop it. It needs to be taken off the shelf and no more be followed. There's too many executive orders. Thank you, Rep. Dubose, her bill, defining the male and female, having to stay in your restroom with your biological choice. So, with all this happening, we need HB4 passed. Mooney's bill, thank you, Rep. Mooney, for that. This has got to stop. It is terrible ideology for our children, and it confuses them. So,
Books.
the books. Oh yeah, you have some porn books over there too. 2 big boxes. This is only just a little of what's going on in our libraries. So anyway, I won't take up all my 3 minutes. Just let you know, we are passionate grannies in Mobile, Alabama, and we are tired of our library being corrupt and corrupting our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up is Tony Keener.
Good morning. My name is Tony Keener, and one of the books, we have more than one in our library. This book, Trans Plus, this is put out by Imagination Press, American Psychological Association. The note to readers in this book says, no matter where you live, it is important to know this. Transgender and gender non-binary people have often held a revered place in their society. We have been healers, charmers, revered rulers. We are no less than stars and are expressions of all that beautiful in this universe that knows no other constant but change. So go forward in this book, in your life, in your world, knowing that you are perfect, whole, and complete, as we transgender you. Operate from a space where you know your own power, your own marvelousness. Know that your ancestors were no less than God. The book goes on. I've been told several times by people in the library service they can just go online. Well, this book helps them out because in 18 chapters, there are a list of 79 websites to help them get to fund buying, ways to tuck. They also tell them how to hide things from their parents. If you get makeup, if you get clothes, your parents don't agree with you, just hide it. They don't have to. It also says that you do not actually have to be a parent. If you want to be a parent in the future, you can just find someone that has a family and step into that role and play parent. They discuss hormone blockers. They also go into great detail about how to find. It also describes how dangerous this can be. That if you tuck too long or if you bind too long, it can cause permanent damage. But it's an instructional book in the youth section on how to do these things. I also have a very big problem with the ALA, the fact that we have many associations with them at all. Our public library system in Mobile just re-upped their subscription for $2,200. We have 68 counties in the state of Alabama. At $2,200, that is $149. Well, I had to do a bit more on that.
Thank you, we appreciate you coming. Next up is Lindsay Gardner.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Gardner and I am the director of the O'Neill Library. I want to thank you for all the time that you are investing in this meeting today. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because I'm sure many of you have already completed the online trustee training that is required for local library boards, but I do feel it's important to talk about the role of local library boards, which were established by state code and given specific responsibilities, including when the library is open and closed, hiring and firing the director, as well as overseeing the budget and setting policy like collection development policy. The overwhelming majority of local library boards have worked very hard over the past few months to come into compliance with the code changes that you instituted last summer. The vague language in the code changes leads to different interpretations. If you can give us a more explicit definition for words like inappropriate, it would clarify your interpretation of the code changes for libraries. If you can give us specific examples of how the disclaimer can be applied, that would clarify your interpretation of the code changes for libraries. Librarians do not have any materials that meet the legal definition for pornography and obscenity. So using these terms is confusing for librarians who are trying to understand your interpretation of the code changes. If a library is not considered incompliant, if compliance is in question, I have some questions about how that works, and they cover due process, notification, appeals, and judgment. First of all, how are libraries notified that they're being discussed in an open meeting? What level of detail is required in notifications when their compliance is in question? Second, what is the due process? Who will serve on the review committee that looks at these books as a whole? Is that just you? Is it APLS staff members? Is it community members? Is it school librarians? Is it attorneys? Third, will there be a venue or a hearing for libraries to argue their cases about compliance? Will there be an appeals process? And if so, who is the arbiter of that appeal? And last and most importantly is judgment. Will you issue a detailed judgment citing the sections that you feel the library does or does not comply with? If you do issue these detailed judgments, is that considered precedent? Or are you willing to hear every library's case based on the merits for their community? I hope that you will consider all of these questions as you discuss compliance, because these are all elements that local library boards have incorporated in their challenge processes, and I think you should have at least as much due diligence as local library boards. Thank you.
I want to and just with you, we support local library, as we do, and you brought up really good points. If you would email me the list of things you brought up, about reading that more in depth, Yeah, it's very helpful, I appreciate it. Because it is a real concern, right? I will say there are some word use that does have definitions in state law. We can provide those to local libraries, that's fairly easy. So, yes, if they're needing more guidance, we can provide that. All right, excellent. Moving on, Bradley Johnson is next up, or Brady Johnson, sorry.
All right, well, thank you guys for letting me speak today. I just want to start off by saying that with the time that I have, I want to make a clear case against gender ideology. And there's a few reasons why I'm opposed to it. And some of them are more personal, from personal experiences, I should say, and then some of them are more big picture. And so I want to start by taking a step back and looking at some of the big picture reasons. And I want to show to the best of my ability how these ideas are actually dangerous, especially for young people, because if we can prove that they are harmful, then it makes sense to want to take these books out of the library so that children aren't exposed to them. So what does transgenderism or gender ideology, or whatever you want to call it, what does it represent? I think it represents a rejection of objective truth with made-up identities replacing biological reality. And I think it's wrong for society to condone ideas like this that will lead to moral relativism and moral chaos, and that undermine our belief in objective truth and objective reality. And so for this reason, and also because of the President's executive order limiting gender to male and female, I would ask that this board removes any books or DVDs in libraries that include sex or gender categories, so that the state doesn't lose any federal funding. And I would also just say that these books, a lot of which are like being highlighted today, promote ideas that are antithetical to the ways that human beings were actually made to live. But it's not only that, because they also, this gender identity experiment, which is really what it is, it especially harms young people. And I think it's very interesting because if you think about it, you'll notice that whenever there's a debate about transgenderism, whatever the issue might be, it always eventually comes back to how these ideas are impacting children and teenagers. And so why is that? Well, why is it that these issues always eventually get back around to how they're affecting the lives of young people? And I think the reason is that these ideas specifically target young people because they're the most vulnerable.
Yes.
And so I've had personal experiences in my own life with people I know who are my age or younger who have these ideas pushed upon them through social media or through books like these in libraries. And I would say from personal experience that it has become bad among young people. And the reason is that society encourages and promotes and celebrates these ideas, and it encourages, through books like these ones, it encourages kids who are already a little bit confused or already might be uncomfortable in their bodies to just change their identity. And I think that's wrong, and I think it's especially disturbing when it comes to even younger children whose brains aren't fully developed yet and might be very vulnerable to these ideas. And so, how am I doing on time?
You're out of time. You're out of time.
I do ask, how old are you?
I'm 17.
All right, next up is Linda. Yes.
Good morning. I was here last year, and I'm from Mobile. I'm also an Eagle Forum publisher. And I spoke about a book called My Lesbian Experience that was in the juvenile section of the library. Hallelujah, that book was moved to the adult section, so now my grandson cannot get a hold of it. So they are progressing, they are beginning to move books, but however, still finding them. So this book here is called My Rainbow, and it starts out about a little girl talking about her hair, playing with her Barbies. And then she goes on to say, because her hair is short, that she's a transgender. That doesn't make sense to me. It starts out as a beautiful little book about a beautiful girl, and then she goes into becoming transgender because her hair is short. Oh, I've had short hair. and I'm not transgender. The second book, I Am Jazz, and we've all seen Jazz on television. This is in the juvenile section, which is what, ages up to 13? By the way, this book is in the easy books, which means that would be in the very small children's section. So my youngest grandsons can get a hold of this, and they're easily accessible by hand. This next one about Jazz is in the juvenile section, and it's about a little boy that decides that he's a girl. And on television, he goes on and he transitions, and the parents are all for it, and they're all with him. But this child has suffered greatly. After he transitioned into a girl, he's gained over 100 pounds because he's still confused. This next one is Beyond Magenta. This is multiple stories about, and this was in the youth section, so this would be the 13-year-olds and up. So this one has different stories about children, how they started out in their transitioning and how they decided that they were transgender. And if you read it, most of these children had very tragic childhoods, tragic. Starting out being very young, violence in their neighborhood, parents that weren't married, fathers that left, living with grandparents, being put in foster care, one after another, even being put into mental institutions.
Thank you. Next up is Ian Amador.
I am here today to speak about how transgender illusions changed the destiny of my brother Victor. He was a normal child. My parents saw a drastic change in his thinking in middle school. Later, they found out a male teen was sexually assaulting him. During his teens, he spoke about changing his identity. As a teen, he began illegal hormonal shots without my parents' consent. Hormonal therapy began, then female transitional surgeries were done in his early 20s without my parents' consent, which required life-altering transitional medication maintenance. Those medications caused heart and kidney problems, and at age 30, dialysis began. Then at age 42, a kidney transplant. Anti-rejection medications were added to his list of meds. Then a heart pacemaker. Hundreds of hospital stays became normal in our family. He said to me after all the surgeries, I don't want this anymore, but there's no going back. As he lay knowing he was dying, slowly he cried out to God and said, I renounce my female body because I know I am a man. Transgender surgeries, lifestyles, and medications killed my brother, but he did not know how to go back. I'm here to request that our Alabama public libraries be in compliance with President Trump's executive order stating that federal funds shall not be used to promote gender ideology and identity, which includes transgenderism. Alabama state law, What is a Woman bill states that Alabama recognizes only two sexes, male and female, and it codifies into law. The state of Alabama receives almost $3 million annually in LSTA federal grant money. In order to continue to receive federal grant funds, I am asking you to send a letter to all library directors requiring that they remove all books and DVDs, fiction and nonfiction, that are not compliant with President Trump's executive order and Alabama state law, and also asking that the libraries be prohibited from purchasing these books again.
These books can easily be identified and found by the library director and staff by typing in gender ideology, transgender, or gender identity in the card catalog, locating the books and removing them. Because this is a presidential executive order and definitions codified in state law. The transitional process of
Time.
Thank you. I just want to say this
Time.
right here is the only thing I have left to my brother. This is ring.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Ivan Hendon. All right, Judy Hicks.
Well, I'm Judy Hicks from Shelby County, and I'm from Syracuse, New York. I think it's probably how people like. So I'm going to try to say the truth in love. So I would like to review.
You can start by telling everybody in the room, bless your heart. That's all
So anyway, I need to review the legal thing, and then I'm going to tell you the rules. On January 20th, President Trump's first day in office, he announced an executive order. There will officially be, in the United States, only two genders, male and female. That's what you need for a marriage and family. In February, Kay Ivey said that, signed into law, a bill defining sex as determined at birth. That means the XX or the XY, which is not changed by environment. The bill defines a female as one who has a reproductive system that makes an egg. And of course, males only make sperm. Governor Ivey said in Alabama, we believe there are two genders, male and female. I'm here today to request that our public libraries be in compliance with President Trump's executive order and Alabama state law. President Trump's executive order states that federal funds shall not be used to promote gender ideology and gender identity, which includes transgenderism. So we're not going to have that. And if you want to do that, you're going to do it for free, because we're not going to pay you. I think that's what it means. So in order to accomplish this, I'm encouraging the group here to give grant money to those libraries that can prove that they removed all these books and do not promote gender ideology. This is what one of the ladies said. Alabama gets $3 million for library stuff. Let's spend it on books about Abraham Lincoln or Paul Revere, somebody who's a good person. So our children will have something to say, I want to be like that person. So the library directors, I hope that you can be willing to put some pressure on these libraries to get them to do this. So I want to say that I have been praying about this all week, and I see something that Jesus spoke about in the New Testament about the Good Shepherd. David was a good shepherd. Time. Oh. Anyway, be a good shepherd and kill the predators. Thank you.
All right, next up is Cindy Battles.
Hello, my name is Cindy Battles, it's in Alabama. As a previous homeschooling fellow and registered nurse, volunteered on libraries as a resource for further education and learning, as a reference tool, and a place to foster the love of reading. But today it seems the libraries are being used to further an ideological agenda. Sex and gender are words used to categorize males and females, like chromosomes assigned at conception. This hasn't been really contested since the beginning of time until this last several years. Gender, a hijacked word that has recently been used to express an emotion that describes how a person may feel about themselves or how they would like to be characterized. It has no scientific basis and may or may not match a person's biological sex. Yet our libraries are filled with books teaching our children this unscientific information. This pronoun book is called the Pronoun Book by Cassandra Jules Corrigan. Tells a child that they can choose to be a boy or a girl, and if their choice matches their biological sex, then that's called cisgender. If their choice does not match, then that's considered transgender. If their choice is neither, then they would be considered non-binary. They could be considered bigender if they choose to be both sexes. If a child may choose to be part female or part male, then they would be categorized as women male or women female. But if they just aren't sure and they like to change things up, they can choose to be gender fluid. This gives them an option to choose how they may feel when move on. The same book instructs our children to choose pronouns to describe their gender and non-gender choices. It encourages the importance of using the correct pronouns for friends or people that they may meet. This all seems to be too complicated and too confusing for our young children to understand, and also still has no scientific background. A certain group of people argue that everyone should be able to see themselves in the library. Is this really their desire, or is this just a ploy to indoctrinate our children to advance an agenda? To make my point, a past self-described Marxist lesbian American Library Association president, while speaking to a group of librarians, stated that librarians can shape students to become agents of change both inside the library and out. This sounds like an agenda to promote an ideology to me. Since our current president, by executive order and by administrative law, limits sex and gender to only two categories, male and female, I asked that the Alabama Public Library Board require all books, DVDs, and any digital content that includes any other sex or gender removed.
Thank you. Cheryl? Just second roles.
Hello. Real quick, based on biology, I challenge all to please go look up people that have more than two chromosomes. They are born with sometimes XXY, XXYY. So please do some research in that. I am here to represent the reasonable majority of Fairhope. I have copies here and have sent you, Chairman Wall, containing 101 signatures from Fairhope parents. This letter expresses our unwavering support for the Fairhope Public Library and its dedicated staff. Our library is a cherished institution that has consistently served our families and the community with professionalism and integrity. Chairman Wall, we appreciate that your email to our concerns, response to our concerns, and your dedication to addressing the remarks that you have made in recent past. You have stated that you are a strong advocate for the First Amendment and that you do not support book banning and using government authority to dictate what books parents are allowed to read their children. With that in mind, I would like to draw your attention to some of the books that have been brought up of challenges that our library continues to face. A small but vocal group has repeatedly questioned the placement of certain books, claiming they are inappropriate and sexually explicit based on their religious views. For instance, consider this book, Yes and No, a conversation about consent. This is an age-appropriate book, educational book, designed to introduce young children to the concepts of consent in a simple and accessible way. Moving into an adult or teen section would constitute this as a form of censorship, effectively making it inaccessible for its intended audience. APLS Rule 520-2-2.3, parentheses 2, parentheses I, says age-appropriate materials regarding religion, history, biology, human anatomy should not be construed to be against this rule. Censorship is defined as limiting, removing access to words, images, or ideas. Many of the books being challenged are labeled as containing sexually explicit material simply because they address topics of the human body and discuss personal boundaries. Why would anybody want to stop kids learning that everyone has a right to make choices about their body? As a reasonable majority, we stand firmly in support of the public library and its mission to provide access to knowledge while upholding the principles of intellectual freedom. If this board is committed to Rule 520-2-2.03, parentheses 2, parentheses I, we call upon this board to cease its threats and intimidation directed to our library. We're following y'all's rules. Rather than casting doubt, threatening funding, we urge you to recognize Fairhope Public Library as a model of excellence and one that serves the true needs and values of our communities. Thank you for your time. And I would like to hand you guys the petition, not petition, but the signed parent letter. So thank you.
All right, next up is Rebecca Watson.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Watson. I'm the chapter chair of Monticello in Montgomery County. I am not a small group. We're a very large group from Fairhope, Alabama. And let me just start with reading a little bit about some text out of the book. This is called Tricks. This is in our team section. You have access to all of these books in that packet, but I will explain the packet after I'm done. This is on page 411. The straight sex has become routine, something I can shut myself off from. But now Jerome wants other things. Let me watch you touch yourself. Freaky things. Did you know guys like to use vibrators too? Like this. Downright disgusting things. Your period. I like the taste of blood. How I wish I could say no. But even if I thought he'd leave me alone, saying yes is how I have convinced him to make Father believe I am fit. This book is about sexually explicit excerpts involving minors. It also contains explicit child rape and abuse, illegal drug use, graphic violence, underage alcohol consumption, and adult and child prostitution. And that is a child prostitute that I was just reading about. Next book is Soul. This book gave me nightmares last night. I stayed up almost all night reading these books. And I can't imagine a child reading this in our library. This is also in the teen section. Then he is on top of me, and this is the child that we're talking about right now. Then he is on top of me, and something hot and insistent is between my legs. He grunts and struggles, trying to fit himself inside me. With a sudden thrust, I am torn in two. Oh yes, he is panting. Habib is good in bed. I hear, coming from a distance, the steady thud, 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 and register that this is the sound of a headboard hitting the wall. After a while, I don't know how long, another sound interrupts the rhythmic thud of the headboard. I know this noise from somewhere. I work very hard to make it out. Finally, I identify it. It is the muffled sound of sobbing. Habib rolls off me. Then I understand I was the person crying, and that is a child. So, what we're talking about is the law. We're talking about policy. We're not talking about how we emotionally feel about what's going on. So, appropriate for minors is defined as in Alabama Code Title 13A. The average person applying contemporary community standards would find that this material, taken as a whole, appeals to the prudent interests of minors.
Quick question on the books in Fairhope. You have requested the board to review them?
I have. So if you want to take a look at the fourth tab, you will see a list of all of the books that we have requested. They also voted at their last library board meeting not to revisit any of the books that have been asked to be reconsidered before the APLS policy. So we have come back and said, can you please review all of the books that you have denied? Because now they are against APLS policies, and they have said, no, we're not doing that, and that our decision stands for 5 years. So I would like to request that their funding be removed based on the fact
that they are not in compliance with APLS policies. And once they get into compliance, I would love for them to have their funding back, but at this time, they are not compliant. They have continually dismissed and the law and APLS policies, and we believe their funding should be frozen.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I like your question.
Yeah, and I think that was the final, so those of you who are here can return to the room, or if you want to gather on this side, that's fine, but, thank you all for being here. I think you were here when I addressed the last group when they left, but we appreciate everyone taking the time to be here and speaking up, and being a part of this process.
I had a really bad story. You guys studied nonsense. It's a red ribbon hard. That's all I have left.
Can we have a break for a minute, John, to stretch our legs out in the break?
Would the board like to take a break?
Yeah, a few minutes.
All right, we'll do a 5-minute recess, with no objection. No objection to the 5-minute recess. Ron and everything.
Okay, so either way, I thought.
That's incredible.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I'm gonna miss it. 2 days.
Appreciate you. I was gonna say.
Do you just get your job safe? These programs that you're teaching?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe federal funds for you.
No, the only thing that's slowed down, and it's actually been blessed, is my travel. Everything that past like month and a half that I would be traveling, and it's been on. So, still the same.
Great. That's what I need.
So,
Because they would be, John, put them back in the agenda.
For some of the church thing, it's good, it's amazing.
Yeah. And Victoria and his grandson. Yeah.
He's not my
That's great.
I didn't know. I didn't last Tuesday. And that's what there's been doing.
He does priority talk radio out. Y'all do Greg Davis. He'll probably talk time.
What is it? Did you bring it cake for us? We need dessert. I'm sorry to, no problem. Yeah, I just went yesterday. I won tennis, I won baseball, I won dance, and our grandkids keep me busy. Did you ever see Buddy Montgomery? Oh, yeah, she's doing well. I'll listen to her from the time. She's so busy with her grandkids and stuff. She has, I had to talk about her. Since her back surgery, she's done well. Where she takes her. She's done better. It's crazy. It's done to be above.
Out of temporary room, so it's a proper word for that, but I don't know what it is. All right, next item on the agenda is insurance report. I know Amy, you have something to move on.
Yes. I do want to make a motion. This is very concerning because the code is clear, the things that should not be in the children's section. So when there are books with sexual intercourse, masturbation, and they're clearly in the children's section, I'm confused how there is any confusion. So I would like to make a motion to withhold funding from Fairhope Public Library until all books containing sexually explicit topics or pictures as stated in Code, Alabama Code 13A-12-200.1 are moved to the adult section of the library or weeded out. Because there is no exception stated for sex instruction or sex education, instruction or education at all listed in the code. So I want to make that motion. And they can turn it back right back on once the books are moved.
I think that's highly inappropriate.
Well, let's see if there's a second, and then we can have discussion if there's a second.
I second
Okay, we have a second, so discussion.
Two, the Fairhope Library, which is one of the jewels of the state library system, one of the best funded libraries with private support, and one of the most conservative parts of Alabama, that has a library board of prominent people who has recently, because of the criticism, all been reappointed. See, who are some of the highest paying taxpayers in the state, to tell them that we're going to make the choice as to how they do that is, I think, far beyond what the agents.
It's in the code, it's
Well,
literally.
that needs to be taken up with the local library. We should not be directing. I thought we believe in local control. And it seems that there's this movement that you keep supporting, that this state agency needs to micromanage the libraries in the state. And I think that's highly inappropriate.
The state has the money, so if they want to keep the books, they can. But I'm voting to withhold the funding, which is what we have the authority to do. Because all of these books are sexually explicit according to the code. So they can move the books, tomorrow they get their funding back.
Is she with Chris?
She's not.
I thought we were allowing them to take the Chattanooga too.
I gave you the option of going to Denver or staying in here.
Did you give all the other groups?
I did.
Okay, did you tell all the other groups is my question. I just don't want to come back on me.
Yeah, no, we're good there. And I will say, both right, proper decorum process is to address the chairman. Because we don't, obviously we want to make an informed decision, and we want to keep full heads. I do agree that we once we pass state code, we are obligated, it is our duty to enforce it. At the same time, obviously, we respect our local libraries. So, I guess, is there any more discussion on this question?
If we pass the code that says that they must comply and there's no enforcement, what is the point in passing the code would be my question.
Well, right, that's what I was saying, like, we do have the dog in this fight. There are no exemptions to the code, there are no loopholes. I've been very clear about that when talking to and about the Bureau Library.
And then my second comment would be, for libraries that are not in compliance, then are they risking to the entire state losing both state and federal funding? And is that something that it's worth risking for every library in Alabama because we're not in compliance with state and federal laws?
I do think we'll have a conversation about the federal, I think that's a conversation we have to have as a board. Right now, this would be compliance with APLS code, which would be, I have the wording here. And then the question is there's only one question, and it is Fair Hope out of compliance with state code?
And shouldn't we, John, if we believe that, shouldn't we like the Fair Hope Library and tell them we have reports of the church and give them an opportunity to stop before we take such a drastic action?
We did do that. We did that right up to the told us not to reset these policies.
We did not write them, that I understand. They were never sent any letter by this agency to give them students.
Right, they were provided with the code changes, but not a letter regarding this particular situation.
But every library is provided with a code change.
All the libraries that we as an agency and had groups review the policies have Fair Hope policy has met the requirements. Now, as to how we enforce these requirements, I tend to agree that it is a local issue because APLS does not have the staff nor the funding to go check every library to ensure that these materials are on the shelves in the appropriate collections. I firmly believe, that if you want to do that, it's fine, but I agree with Ron that they should be notified and present their case, and you should review it as a board.
Now, I will say, look, one thing that no agency of government is ever going to allow is for someone to set a code policy and then intentionally disobey that policy and expect to get away with the disobedience because they have set a library policy. That is ingenuous. No other sector of government would allow that. Law enforcement would not allow that. Intentional disobedience of state code. And now their local code, because their codes are in compliance, they cannot ignore those codes and leave sexual assault material in their library. You can't read the policy and then just leave the books in place. Because there's a broader question in the policy changes that this board made, where we said you have to set a policy, but then you actually have to remove the books from the children's section. That is the code. They are bound by it. And so them just changing their code is not compliance. They have to remove the books. The question I have now is, I do believe, looking at the material, they are not in compliance with APLS code. The question is, there's only one question, I think, and that's whether we give them a warning and allow them time to do it, or whether we remove their funding today.
Something like a 30-day warning. You have to remove your books within 30 days or you will lose your funding.
Well, that brings to respond back to the board, says that it's 60 days.
Why can't we turn off their funding and give them 60 days or 30 days to move the books and then reinstate the funding, which is what we said.
We didn't do that. We had all these speakers here talked about books in other libraries in the state.
But that's what we said.
Are we going to remove their funding too? Are we going to start doing that with all the libraries that
we will have to be consistent, and we'll have to follow the state code, like I said.
But, you know, we were sat here and they represented, I don't know if they're telling the truth or not. We're like this.
Simple card catalog search will immediately tell you can look at any library and pull it up.
It depends on how
One
much.
has a slippery slope that we start with cutting funding from the main libraries, as y'all know.
Well, the goal is to get the libraries in compliance. I think everyone sitting around this table supports our local libraries. And look, we proved that at the last APLS board meeting when we returned the grants.
We will not, we're not demonstrating that at this age. We're not demonstrating at all support libraries.
It goes back to what I said, no other government agency would ever allow open disobedience and flagrant disobedience to code change, to policy code, and not require some sort of action.
I would propose an amendment to the resolution that they be given.
I would like to be clear.
And to the board to consider their response. 60.
My motion stands.
Okay, so you want to vote on immediate vetting?
Yes, and they can move the books and then we'll give them the funding back in 30 days.
And would that go to any library that isn't specifically
fair?
Well, I mean, look, in my opinion, it is for every library already.
Yeah.
Like, let's be clear, the code change is in effect, it is incumbent on every single library to understand that. The code change in this effect, they cannot have sexually explicit material in children's sections.
But whether we sat here and we heard all these other examples, you know, we're going to do the same thing with them, or we're saying and have error.
One thing I think is very, very important.
That's what I think is inappropriate.
As I've communicated with local libraries, with activists, with concerned parents, something I've always said is, I want this handled at the local level whenever possible. If someone finds a book they find inappropriate, take it to the local board. I don't want it to be brought to us until all due diligence has been done at the local level. What makes Fair Hope different is they are refusing to hear from parents in their area.
Well, I think what it seems to me is Fair Hope is urging parents, and the board has considered that with the advice of their librarians and
decided not to remove them.
Which is where the non-compliance comes in.
Yeah.
They've made the decision to disobey state code already. Which is why we're talking about them instead of other libraries. Other libraries have not gone through this entire process.
I think we were told other libraries have been compliant with that.
And they need to go through the process.
Well, and if you notice, like, Montgomery, people are working with them right now, they were moving books. Like they're still in the process. We don't want to punish a library that is trying to be compliant. We want to give grace. We want to make sure we're helping and supportive. The key is, if we know a library is intentionally disobeying state policy, we have no choice but to get involved. Like I said, no other government agency would allow intentional disobedience of their state code.
And how we handle this, I mean, this is the first time that, the code is fairly new, and how we handle this is gonna set the tone for all the other, libraries that are not in compliance. So I say we do, come on hard. I mean, say, you know what, we'll cut it, but if you have in 30 days, you're able to come in and adjust it and fix it.
Based on Ron's comment, I agree that if they've been told and they specifically have chosen, they've put their policy and they've said we're not doing it, that's their decision to not comply, then there has to be repercussions.
And I don't know that.
Right.
She said that.
Right.
I think that's why we ought to give the library an opportunity to respond to this.
I do think that your motion, it should include confirmation that those books presented are still in minor sections of their library, and that.
I'm sorry. It's actually in there. Every single book.
Yeah, you're not a board member, I'm sorry. But it would be very legitimate to check that and to confirm the vote that was made that they are not hearing after their local code changes and state code changes, they're not allowing a redress of grievance for parents.
Books that
Books that were previously reviewed before the code changes.
Right.
Yeah, because that said
that's not appropriate, right?
Right, it's a very different set of rules. So I guess that would be my recommendation at minimum. It would be to add that into your motion, to be amended to it.
So what is the motion?
Yes, if you want to retract, I think the proper procedure would be to retract that motion and, or keep that motion, add to it, those two additional items.
Okay, I wanna keep this motion and state yours again.
That we would, before implementation, we would check that the books are in minor sections.
Juvenile section.
They're located in juvenile, currently located in juvenile sections of Fairhope Library, and confirm that parents are not allowed to bring up new book challenges after code changes, after the APLS and code changes.
Who is gonna do that? Comes from the board.
I can confirm those things
Okay, next week,
tomorrow.
tomorrow, okay.
I mean, I'll have to get into contact with the Fairhope Library.
I will
So
make-
pending that.
I will add that to my motion then, that Chairman Wall will get in contact with the Fairhope Library and make sure.
Because we don't want to act on just a report from, as a professional board, we should confirm the details.
Tomorrow.
I will do my best as soon as I can. I can't control what I can get a hold of, but I'll do my best. Okay, any other discussion on this? Any other discussion? We'll take a vote. Let's do a roll call vote. Or all in favor, raise your hand. All right, all abstain?
No,
I'm sorry, all no, yes. All right, so the motion carries. I do want to direct the staff, with that in mind, I'll be in communication. Nancy, once I confirm that, we'll talk about details of how that happens, but at the process, but if these items are correct, we'll be cutting their state funding immediately.
Yes.
Okay, so that moves us on to my chairman's report. Always nice to have some controversy before my chairman's report. I do want to thank all those who are still in our observation room and who commented today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you being part of this process. I know for us, it takes a lot of time, but I know for you took the time to drive from all parts of the state to be here and to share your opinion. We respect your opinion. We appreciate every single one of you on every side of every issue for being involved in this process and caring about Alabama libraries. And it's often in these discussions about Alabama children. I think it's important for me as chairman of this board that we try to agree where we can agree. And something that I think we can all agree on is that we all love our libraries. I know I very much do. I never dreamed when I took this appointment originally that we would be thrown into this controversy. I expected this to be, I hate to say boring, but a very non-active board. And that very quickly changed within a year of my appointment. But my love for libraries remains. I love libraries, I love what it brings to our local communities, especially for our youth. And it's why it's so important for me that we do make sure that everyone is comfortable in our libraries. And everybody feels safe. And every single parent does not have to worry about their children stumbling across something in the children's section. Protecting innocence of children is not censorship. It is not bullying. And I want to make it very, very clear, because as I heard people speak today, I found components of every single person. I found components of what they were saying that I agree with. I do believe in the First Amendment strongly. I would fight to the death for the rights and freedoms of the people of Alabama. And that includes the right to the First Amendment, free speech, and to be able to read. Read freely. I am 100% agree that everyone's got a right to read freely and be able to buy any book they want to buy, to read any book they want to read for themselves or to read to their children. I respect parental rights. And I think on those subjects, we're all aligned. I know that I am passionate about freedom of speech, and I would oppose book banning at every level, 100%. The question is not banning books. The question is, like I said, making sure that innocent children don't accidentally stumble across something in the children's section. We're not telling parents don't check a book out of an adult section for your child. We're not telling parents, don't buy this book for your child. No, that's the family's decision. And the APLS code changes, the main thing, my part in it, the main driver was to make sure we put parents back in control and let them make the decisions for their families and for their children, and not have anything that anyone could deem inappropriate or sexual or harmful to children would be found in the children's sections accidentally. So that's my commitment. I feel like it's the majority of the board's commitment. And I certainly hope that we can try to come together as a state, as a community, and come together on the areas where we can agree, and find a solution that best fits every single community, every local library, and every family in the state of Alabama. We're not saying you can't have these books. We're saying let's just not put them with easy access for children who don't want to, their parents don't want to stuff with us. All right, so with that, moving on with my chairman's report, I'm going to welcome our new board member, Cassandra Stevens. I know this is going to be a long board meeting. Congratulations on your board meeting. Very contentious. But if you want to take a minute, just introduce yourself to the board. I would love to give you a minute to do that.
No, thank you very much. I'm honored to have been appointed by Governor Ivey and looking very forward to serving with each of you. I respect everything that each of you bring to the table. I've had quite a bit of experience, lifelong lover of libraries, and I feel like they are an integral part of every community, and I've had the honor of serving on the Shelby board this last year, and working very closely with the director and getting a firsthand experience of what this process is like. And it is a very big undertaking to go through these books and to, I see the individual challenges, and even our very dedicated library staff pulling books and reading excerpts and going, okay, does this fit? Where do we house this collection? And so I know that they are trying very hard to come into compliance, and so I appreciate that perspective that gives me to serve on this board. So thank you all very much, and thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Excellent. Well, and I also want, with that in mind, want to thank, even though she's not here, I want to thank Michelle Hughes for her time and her service on the board before this. I consider her a friend as well as a colleague on the board, and she's officially thank her for her service to the APLS organization. With that, that finishes up my chairman's report. I'll try to keep things brief moving. That brings us to unfinished business items from the last meeting. Starting off with discussion of state aid compliance or non-compliance. I have been all written for this one. You do? I do. You're on the agenda. I am. News to you.
What is the unfinished business?
From state aid compliance or non-compliance. Nancy, do you have any?
You were going to talk with him, John, in minutes. But you want to get in touch with me?
I have talked to them. We will table that one for the next meeting unless there's any objection. All right, there is no objection, it is table. LSTA awards for fiscal year 2025.
They are in here, the board has approved them, we ranked them by when people turned them in the event that we don't have as much money to spend on that. Right now, with all of our funding, it will need to go towards our staffing. We paid 10 library positions with LSTA funds, and we have enough to last to September 30th. When IMLS determines if we get our 2025 money, we may possibly be in a place where we can fund competitive rates. It's totally based on what the amount of the appropriation is and when it comes and how it comes.
So we are going to get the full amount for fiscal year 2025.
I have no idea. IMLS does not have any idea right now either. We have correspondence from them to say to cautiously spend money, and that's about all I know. Is we'll have money from the 2024 budget the end of September 25, and we are waiting to hear from APLS regarding the 2025 allotment, and that should, they are anticipating that to happen in April, when they send us the letter of the allotment.
So what impact has there been on the local library with their grants?
I have no idea, John.
Well, I mean, from our organization, like, have
From our
we paused anything, or?
We haven't awarded any grants because we don't have the money to do so.
And when would that normally come in?
Normally, we run 2 years of grant period. When 25 starts in April, we're pulling from 2025 money.
Right.
But since we haven't got it, we only have 2024 money, and that would go to our staffing positions to run the library for the blind and physically disabled, and to pay for other staffing positions that we do have on the
So we are going to be fully funded through 2024?
Through September 30th, 2024. With the money we have right now.
Right, we have money through September 2025.
We can draw down on that money.
So what we've done is we've kind of halted the grants in order to hold money over to the next fiscal year for.
No, sir, we have the money in the budget to pay for salaries of staff that work in this agency.
Yeah, I would like to hear what you have to comment on that.
No.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, since you all voted in November to go back to the grants, Katie and I and Jennifer all got together, and Jennifer's our finance person, so she was able to help us determine an amount that would be available. Katie and I worked with the applications that we came in. We worked very closely with the state aid compliance at the time, and we came up with a list. Now, keep in mind, y'all supposed to be in January, so that's why it's okay. So in your packet, you should have a list of the applications that we received, and then you should also possibly behind that have the spreadsheet of the promoted awards that we were going to give out. So those applications went out to the library after that time. Lo and behold, coming January, there was the freeze on the federal money. So we had to halt everything because we didn't know what was going to happen. I continue to get contracts back from the libraries. That's their first step. They give their contract documents, they sign off on them, they send them back into us. In a perfect world, which this is not, we would have already gone ahead after October the 1st and been able to date them, have them signed by Dr. Pack, and they could go ahead with their grants. Unfortunately, that did not happen this year because of what was going on with APLS and the funding. So I continue to get out contracts in. I have got nice little stacks, so when it's time, it's going to be interesting when we have to sign off on these. And so I had to notify all of my awardees, I'm sorry, we've had to stop because of what's happening with the executive order. The first one with the freeze. Now, the next day they unfroze, and by then I had whiplash and everything else. So it's like I teach my library and said, my head at that point, my head was spinning faster than the girl in the Exorcist. It was crazy. So now we're still in the holding pattern. Another complication of this was that they've been coming off of the continuing resolution now for quite a while. Okay, just to add fun to it, that expired, this month, and so then if it didn't get extended, then they were really gonna not have any money. They did come in and at least sign off on the continuing resolution to the end of September, which will get us through the FY 2025 year. But now APLS is now having to, they're still waiting for the OMB to get the OMB to review, and then once that happens, I'm sorry, I'm seeing Amy sort of from over here. Then they will reach out to us. I have let my libraries know, my awardees know, the advisory council know, I've let the staff know what's going on. We are now waiting for, we're all playing a great game with APLS. And so once we get the word that the money's in the bank, I'm sorry, I'm not doing anything to, I need those funds, okay? And then we can go forward with that. Now, if they do it in the way that it is normally done, the actual, help me out here for this. The actual appropriation period is actually a 2-year period. It would have starting in October of last year, and it's supposed to go through September of next year. So that would get us through actually 26. Now, after that point, I don't know what FY 26 is gonna bring with APLS. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's actually kind of very complicated. That's just the best way I can explain it. So until we get confirmation of our funding, and my libraries know this, I did not want them spending and I couldn't pay them anything.
Right.
I was not about to
It's
do
actually
that.
respectful,
Yeah,
you
I was not about to do that to these people. And so God love them, they're like, okay, but they're ready to go. And so, once that funding gets done, we can go. I hope this year should never repeat ever again in this entire school year. But that's what we are.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's very helpful because I know that's near and dear to my heart, making sure that our local library is good.
Well, one of the things we've accomplished is that's got the path to start preparing contingency plans with us. Not only do we use federal funds for grants, but it pays a number of the salaries of this agency. We get a $3 million budget. It's going to be devastating for this agency.
And the library for the blind and physically disabled, summer reading program, Homework Alabama, all that will be cut.
Any databases that APLS applies for will be cut.
So we need to start thinking about the worst case scenario. How we would.
Well, I know we're already also, yes.
I feel like Walter Cronkite. Okay, here's breaking news. Doge is currently right now it's at APLS. So I guess now that's gonna be another factor.
So, but anyway, I think the point is that we are facing potential $3 million reduction in funding.
What's even more important is on September 25th, 2025, Congress will make a decision whether they want to continue with APLS funds, grants to the states, and all the other programs that they do. And for museums, because the Act of Libraries and Institute of Museums and Library Services is up for reallocation. And if that happens, that it is not reallocated, that means no federal funding at all for libraries or museums. And that is where we stand now. And in the climate that we're in, I would suspect that it's going to be very difficult for the act to be passed again. It's passed as you go over here and you look at my LSTA report, I have given you some notes about important dates. And if you've read your packet, the reauthorization at this point, we have all kinds of organizations working toward our funding. And if you've been keeping up with it, I've been letting you know what we're doing. Yesterday, I talked with the National Federation for the Blind, and Mark Riccobono wrote a letter to the legislators in Washington, the congressional districts in Washington State, the impact it would have on all of the libraries across the United States. And so we're
and I've done a little bit of digging on kind of what we're facing currently, and it could change, especially if Doge is out there right now. Who knows what comes out today, right? I think right now most like the executive order, trust executive order, would immediately cut that the funding for the federal office is there. It should not affect the grants. Two different areas where that executive order should not. However, there are strings attached to that now, if you will, from an earlier executive order in January that I think we do need to let our local libraries know about, that we need to know about with some specifics regarding some of the gender ideology, was the word you mentioned in that executive order, where grants could not be used for that. And I think that would, I think it's very important that we do let our local libraries know that. Just so they can be informed and know the requirements and to know that, any federal funding at this point moving forward would have those strings attached.
It's not only federal of federal funds, but it's the city and the county's federal funds that go to, I mean, you know, if you get, okay, if a library is using federal dollars for E-rate, it is, they will be impacted by that. They will not be able to get funding for E-rate because it's a federal discount. So there's more ramifications than LSTA when you look at this. There's a lot of ramifications, and IMLS has told us that they will give us guidance. And I feel that we have identified to our public libraries, we're waiting on guidance from IMLS as to the process to follow. And I think they are the agency we need to listen to and follow, because they're going to know exactly what they can do and can't do. And I would not want to give any misinformation to our libraries. But I think they do know the threat of, and the possibilities that once everything is done and cleared, we will have direct guidelines from IMLS. And at that point, I think is the time we give our libraries.
Well, this is something you want to track carefully, because it not only would risk the local library grants, but our entire grant system for APLS. Which is, you know.
Well, there's another issue. When I was up in Washington and talked with our congressional members, I asked them, because our National Library Service falls into DEIA, accessibility. Where do we stand with that? And Katie Britt is having her team look at it from this perspective of how does it impact a special population, in that group is federally funded to provide programs for the individuals who are physically disabled and blind. There's a whole domino effect happening right now, and until things clear up, I don't know. There's also another part of the FCC regulations about that I asked her to look into, and that was wireless internet for circulation in libraries. She wasn't hotspots. She wasn't sure, but there's just a lot of pieces going on with this that I'm trying to track, and so far I've been pretty good at tracking it and letting y'all know what's up, but and letting our congressional members know what to put forward. And she was rather surprised, and so were the other representatives, that some of this would have the impact on libraries. So that's kind of, that gets into my report. I was going to report to you on what activities I did when I was in DC. But the other thing too is, you know, if NLS has a budget within the Library of Congress, and if that budget is not funded, APLS would probably have to pick up. This would impact postage for our library rate postage and the postage for free materials for the blind. So I'm just going to sit here waiting until I get full direction on what impacts all of this will have and what finally evolves. But there's some serious things. APLS's budget cannot afford to send out line material without postage. So there's a lot of implications going on.
Right, very good.
Regarding the executive order, and many of the people speaking about the transgender issues, you know, I know from watching President Trump talk to Governor Janet Mills of Maine, you either comply with his executive orders or he will cut funding. And so this executive order is very clear that I just passed out to y'all, the one that specifically said federal funds will not be used to promote gender ideology. And as several of the speakers requested, would you consider, as the chairman of the board, sending out a letter to our libraries to make them aware of this, or?
I would actually think that would be appropriate. That maybe they should be made aware of it. They may not know, and we don't know who's going to be coming through. That each agency shall assess the grant conditions. We don't know who's going to be assessing those, and it's good to be in front of her and RDG compliance and let our local libraries know what that this executive order exists.
And-
and the impact it could have on this agency as well as their local.
And the thing we were talking about, like with Doge, they can look at our whole state card catalog in 30 seconds and tell every gender book that's in our library. So they can pull state funding. They don't have to go to board meetings and, individually. And that's what he's saying in his executive order. So I do think that would be helpful to have a letter from you to the library directors to.
I think it'd be appropriate to copy the White House on it as well.
Yes.
To let them know that we are taking it seriously and do our due diligence.
Well, Alabama will be in the lead on this, so we have to make it work.
Well, that would also give us a chance to advocate for our libraries, for library funding, and for local libraries as well as our state agency. So I would want the board's approval to figure out that letter, though. I wouldn't want to act alone with the board if they're trusted to need it.
State aid come from federal programs or from the state. Our budget comes from the state for taxes that the state of Alabama receives, correct?
Yes, this executive order would only risk losing the federal grants.
Federal grants, which I think we've mentioned that somewhere with our librarians.
3 million.
3 million, that's a lot.
Yeah.
We don't want to risk that.
Right. So no, I agree. Do we need a motion?
Let's do a motion just to make sure.
Well, I'll move it.
All right.
Second. Okay.
All right, any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, is there any objection? I'm hearing no objection, I'll work on that. I love getting more work. No, I feel like this is an important issue, and they need to be directed.
And I did a copy in the White House to make sure.
All right, excellent. So that moves us on to fiscal year 2026 update. I feel like we've done that. Status of final and essential positions at APLS. Okay.
Well, in light of things, I do think we need to move on with, I'm not sure where we need to move on, but we have not at this time been able to fill the ASA retired state employee position, ASA 2 position. We continue to search lists, and we're finding there are very few people who are signing up on the ASA 2 list that they want to be promoted, and by the time we contact them, they are promoted. The assistant director, we had interviews for 3 people. We do have the money in our budget because we eliminated 1 position that was over the consultants, and we combined the assistant director for public services to be the person over the consultants and to work with me on the public side. Kellen is the assistant director on the federal side. She knows all of her federal things. We interviewed 3 people, and 2 of those people were inside candidates. I'm not gonna name them here because I don't wanna discredit their names, but candidate A had some experience with working with public libraries in different areas, and we had candidate B who was above all in having worked in public libraries and supervising and working with boards and working with agendas. And then we had a third one who knew a lot about. Candidate C came in with a lot of different backgrounds. She was from the outside, but she was not so focused on public libraries. So I would recommend that we go with our candidate A, and that I offer her the position. She is on our staff at this time.
And go over the duties of the position, right?
They cover everything. And I did work with Kellen and Katie on the LSTA grants. We went through them together. I mean, they came in Jennifer, we all sat at the table in the office. I was involved in this things here. They would be back up they would be over the consultants who work directly with public libraries, and they would make sure that our initiatives and programs and training and things they would come to me with that, and they would design that, which would, and that type of service. They would, anything that related to any relationships with, like if we're partnering with other groups to promote things like the like we did with the Department of Education and we did with DHR. They would be totally in charge of coordinating that and working with that project. So it's just dealing with a bunch of, I can pull full job descriptions into you, but it's anything that comes up that, you know, it's duties that I didn't have time to do when the board said that we needed 2 assistant directors. My focus was on other things and I was being bogged down by the day-to-day decisions of networking, supervising consultant staff. The consultant staff is supervising the consultant staff and making sure the consultants are aware of everything that you've said in this meeting. When we leave out of here, this assistant director will go back and talk with consultants and will say, or I would have had to go back and talk with them and say, you know, if anybody calls about this, this is the board stance on this, and you need to give them this information, and making sure that all of our consultants are aware of what is going on and how to respond to the cause, because each consultant is assigned a district, and some of them have more leverage than others. So it's a very critical role in making sure the public part side is covered when I can't cover it, that they are able to cover it.
Very good. I'm very comfortable not mentioning the names of those who are not being hired. I think it would be very appropriate if we're about to make a vote on a hire. We're going to know the name after we're done anyway. I'd love to hear that, the name now with more consideration.
Well, I haven't informed the others that, well, it's Katie Bailey. Katie has been interim in this, and Katie has done a great job in working with us in reviewing the policies. Normally, that would have fell on but she's been a great part of the team in reviewing all the library policies to ensure that they have the guidelines, you know, and that's been a big role of our consultants and her and other staff members. So, and making sure that it is consistently done and that we're not looking at favoritism with libraries or anything.
All right, so that would bring us to accepting a motion for that approval of that hire.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Not any discussion. Is there any opposed? The no opposition is unanimous. Congratulations.
We have hired the technician for the library for the blind, and I'm asking permission to hire an IT technician for the help desk, and do a search and report back to the library. We've had this position vacant for about 9 months, and our staff have been doubling up on serving our public libraries who have had computer issues, our smaller libraries. So I'm seeking permission from the board to go ahead and start doing the interviews and hire the person and report back to the board who we hired. It's an entry-level position, and I think we have the sustainability in our budget at this time, and if we continue to get our LSTA funds, that we can sustain the funding of this position.
I agree. I have some reservations if you don't know the status of our federal grants. How much burden has this placed on current staff?
Libraries are having to wait probably a day when we were able to get responses to it within 30 minutes prior to this. But I have been hesitant, and I've gone back and forth on this. But it's.
I would recommend maybe waiting to see what happens with the federal grants. Not saying no, just delay.
Also, it depends on what we get with state budget.
Correct. Okay. So that would be my recommendation. And if the board feels that way, there just needs to be a motion where someone wants to make a motion.
Okay.
All right, here's the motion. Continue. Administration divisions. ASA2 or retired student employees.
Well, we've been trying to fill that one. I would continue to try to fill that one. That one has caused some But Denise and I have been working front desk over this one. And whether we go part-time with that or full-time and report back to the board, we had permissions we've had this open since Ron was chairman. And at that time, the board did give me permission
Just trying to find record.
to fill it in and report back to the board. That one is in that situation.
Okay. All right, I think that brings us to new business.
You know, is that a waiver? Yeah.
So, was there a waiver there?
Yeah, Carrollton Public Library requests a waiver of the state aid rules for FY 25 for funding. It wasn't.
Oh, right, yes, the first item in new business, yeah.
Yeah, what we have here is, I think we ought to waive with Carrollton Public Library. There's been circumstances that are beyond their, I don't want to go into detail, but let's just put it this way, they're not going to be in compliance, not because of the collection rules, but of other APLS rules that we have, which is completing the PLDS. And in my opinion, the person who was at the library, the information they would have provided has not been correct. The mayor and the city and the board are working, they have replaced the former director with a new director, and I feel that it is such a tiny community that we need to go ahead and waive this in requirement of the PLDS.
I'll support that. All right, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, is there any objection? Hearing no objection, we approve the waiver. All right, next on the agenda is the Alabama Public Library Service Executive Board meeting. Oh, this is my item. Yeah, I brought this up last time. You know what? I had a very, very productive meeting with the State Library Board local directors back several months ago. Really enjoyed my conversation. I feel like a lot of bridges were built. A lot of good, you know, just sharing. There was some villainization on both sides. And I feel like that process was just very, very good. Heard, you know, got a lot of feedback on the federal grants. And, you know, appreciate the standing ovation when we return that. Like, I feel like, and that is my heart. My heart is to return a good relationship on all fronts in the Alabama library system. With that, some of the requests that I felt like were very common sense. Like, they just very easy to approve, and it brings transparency to organization, allows more involvement from local communities, and easier access to information that would already be accessible with a open record request. So the three items on here are going to be all meetings, video conference, where the public can view it. I don't think it'll be too hard, right? I mean, I talked to you a little bit about that, but it's possible. And then posting meeting minutes on the website, and then also releasing the meeting's agenda on the website when it's sent out, once it's finished, it's announced to board members. I would ask for a motion to approve all three of these together as a package. Is there such a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Only question I have, will there be a link provided so folks know, okay, click this link at, 10 a.m. in order to watch the meeting, say if you're at home?
I would leave it to our esteemed tech guy, but I would think if you're lazy, just have it on the website, like the video streaming directly on the website, or a link to a streaming service on the website. And actually, we've done the homepage, date of the meeting, without too much trouble. Or create a special page, like a meetings and minutes page, where we have the link, the past minutes there, as well as during the meeting, have a live feed. Any other discussion?
What's the timeline on that? Like, could you do that for the next meeting? Is that something realistic?
Yeah, essentially what we're doing today is just make the link available publicly.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the ease. Like kind of confidence and it's easy, like what I like to hear. All right, any other discussion? All right, hearing no other discussion, let's take a vote. Is there any opposed? Hearing no opposition, it is unanimous. And that was something I really think it is a good idea. I love transparency. I think this is a good step. We want to show everyone involved that we're trying to make the best decisions for the people of Alabama. We care about transparency. We care about being open to public. We want to hear their discussions. I know that was one of my priorities as chairman, not just these, but also the allowing everyone to speak, which I know got long today, and I apologize. It was my decision to hurt all of you. But I hope you bear with me with that commitment to hear from people, because I think it's very important that we do our due diligence. All right, so moving on, flipping to the backside of the agenda. Item 3, lawsuit. George Kelly for the state of Alabama.
We were named as one of the,
congratulations, Stubbs.
yes, congratulations, Stubbs, and 35 other agencies. This has been turned over to the Attorney General's office to respond to, and they have assigned someone to do this.
Excellent. All right, so this is item 4.
We have signed our agreement with the Attorney General's office to have them represent us, and we have, they will be doing this per hour every board meeting, and anytime we consult them.
I didn't realize we were paying them.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to talk to somebody. How much did you worth anyway? That got after. All right.
Statement.
Statement of economic interest, my favorite.
It's due, and if you have any questions about if you were a board member before 2025, you will need to fill out one. Any staff member who has a supervisory role has to fill one out. I think Penny has done a good job of letting all of our staff know.
And I believe that's due the end of April, right?
This due at the end of April, and they do send you notices that you have not done it. It is online and it's not as cumbersome as it used to be.
So that would apply to all members of the board except for our newest member. Descendant, you would be,
Except
lucky you don't have to come next year.
Well, legislative action, as far as I know, the House Bills 4 and Senate Bill 6 are still in committees and maybe coming out. HB 4 is the one that says librarians, exempting librarians from having educational materials that contain sexual content, et cetera, in the library. If that passes, there may be some ramifications as to whether the exemption of public libraries to contain materials with sexual content that is educational may be in conflict with what we're wanting to do. I don't know. With the Fairhope Library, right now it stands until the state legislature passes that and puts libraries in jail. This just popped in my mind. I don't know whether libraries are exempt right now. Maybe that's something that Mr. Albritton might want to look at, but make the motion to do what you're going to do, and that's great. As far as our budget, it will come out after April 1 from the Senate on the state operating budget for us. I've been making my rounds and talking to them and handing them the information sheet on what APLS does in our budget, and the Senate seems to be agreeable with funding us. The House, we're kind of tending towards let's just level fund you and go with what Governor Ivey has stated.
Which is the same from last year.
Which is same from last year, which, with the cost increase of different things, with inflation, it's going to impact. I wouldn't need
Well, I'd like to get back with more from the year before, what I would consider.
Yeah, but, so they've seen my face, they know I'm around. They know I'm very pro libraries. And I guess it's ready for Jennifer to give a report.
Right.
I don't have much. Included in the packet is the budget for the state funds and our federal funds as of, this is as of the end of February. But we're right on track this time of the year. If you have specific questions.
You don't think that's sort of problem, but we like to hear it.
Not at the moment.
I know, not both, not.
Yeah, Right. That brings us to item 2.
I've been doing a lot of stuff. Don't have any questions. Legislatively, I've been keeping y'all informed on the APLS and the actions it's been taking. We have a person who is in contact with Senator Reed. He is a Senator Reed from Rhode Island, has taken the torch for the last 20 years to promote LSTA funding. We're getting information directly from his office on the status of things, and believe me, he keeps on top of it. I had the honor of giving him the Carl Elliott Award from our Southern Council of Chief Officers, and I gave the legislators have received a copy of the Accidentally Activist Changing the World in One Small Step at a Time, which is reiterates Mary Jolly was Carl Elliott's aide during the time when he sponsored the LSTA bill, and it is homage to Alabama being the father and birth of the first federal bill for funding for libraries. They've got copies of the annual report, which if we look at it, we are doing wonderful. Each of y'all, maybe you didn't get one. But this is the impact that we are making on our libraries, our public libraries that we serve. This was very useful when I talked to our Washington delegation, and they were asking about how we spent federal dollars and that. And most of them had received copies of these because we do distribute them to that. I guess the only thing left would be what the RFP for the writing of the history. And if the board wants to fund it. Right now, since we haven't filled several positions, we do have $20,000 to fill the writing of the APLS history. We haven't filled the kids position. We eliminated the position that was ours, head of art coordinators. So we do have the money to do that, and I guess it's up to the board to decide if they want to follow through with it under these circumstances. But there is no definitive history of Alabama's public library service, and I have tried to write one for ages, and I think the longer we wait, the longer we're going to miss some oral histories. And we had 2 people, very good writers, who submitted proposals for this, and I am confident that they will be able to talk to some of our former APLS employees, talk to some of the former library directors, and I'm afraid if we don't get this history written, that a lot of the history of APLS will be lost. Whenever you look at it, y'all are probably not aware, because most of the staff and anybody in Alabama are not aware of it, but part of getting our LSTA grants was a Southern thing. We had what we called dragon librarians back in the day, and they worked the Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, worked LSTA very hard. That was Ellen Day Moe. When you come up to the next one, Emily Reed, she worked very hard to get funding for libraries in Alabama and to establish having at least one library in all 67 counties. She was the one during segregation that gave the African American libraries money to Bible school. This is not really out there. You have to read all the board minutes. You have to go through a lot of things to find that. But she gave 68 cents per capita for the black population for them to have their own library. So I feel that this is going to be lost. And I feel that it's a project that I would like to see through, but it is up to you totally to see if you think we have the money. If we don't have the money, I possibly could. If y'all are willing to fund it partially, I may be able to fund some donors who would be willing to contribute. But This is not in archive history, this is not in your regular history books, this is not, it is a chore, and thank goodness I've been around libraries enough to know what happened. And I know the people who were the movers and shakers back in those days. And Mrs. Bigard was one of the prominent librarians you had here too.
Is that something that needs a vote, needs a approval?
I think, I mean, with our dire straits of funding, I think we should vote on it. And I think it is, I think we can find the $20,000 within our budget to do it for 2 years. That's, you know.
Are you opposed to delaying that once again to see how the federal grants go?
Well, here's the process, is we've got the RFP out, we've got 2 writers willing to do it. And I have to respond back to the RFP. Right now, without filling those positions, do we have enough surplus, Jennifer, to pay the $20,000 to?
Right, but we also have those positions budgeted as well that don't decide to delay.
Yeah, so we could get the payment out of that easily.
It's hard for me to, like, if we're telling local libraries that we don't, sends a bad message to me. We tell a local library we can't give you your grants, but we're gonna spend extra money on this.
Well, I mean, their grants are like $30,000-$40,000, and this is over a 2-year period. It's up to you on that.
So what are we talking, 20,000?
20,000.
2 years,
10,000 a year.
I think we ought to do it.
I'll still say, we cut
Does
their
it
livestock.
hurt anything to delay those, what I'm saying? Like, if we'll know in 2 or 4 months.
We would have to do another RFP. And the people who submitted the RFP they allocated their time to do this project and looking at it, and they're probably, once I tell them that we're not funding this RFP at this time, they'll probably pick up other projects.
Is there a deadline on that?
Yes, sir, I have to report back on Friday whether we are accepting.
On Friday?
Or I might could call state purchasing and get it delayed to Tuesday. And this also covers the blind. It's a bargain of the deal when you look at all the research that's having to be done. It also covers the blind and physically disabled, how it was in Talladega and how it got moved to APLS. And it's all of that is going to be lost.
Is writing a resource be available online or hard copies or out the home for?
It could be anyway. I mean, we would have in the RFP, we have the copyrighted material. So it would be ours, and it means that all the documents sitting in our closet, that if we had a natural disaster of some type that would be gone, we would have a document. So, it's up to you, but.
But we've got our current budget is approaching $18 million a year. Spending $10,000 a year toward project. It seems to me, we're going forward with it. We've done that as bad. We talked about doing this thing fast and organized.
So would that be a motion?
Yes.
There's a motion, is there a second? Hearing no second, it dies for lack of a second.
Well, if I am available to raise the funds to do this, I will go out and reach out to some organizations this afternoon to see if they will give me the money to do it, and with their permission. If I am able to successfully do that, is the board's, if we do it with outside funding, would it be approved by the board to do so?
I can't, is there any objection?
No, and I think too, again, we can wait. Let's wait, like
right.
we're in this
This
situation.
is not a no, this is not a no, this is a, let's see what happens. All right, anything else for your report?
Let's see. Pretty much all of that's on there. We have the statistical report for our library services. That's pretty much it, John.
All right, well, I want to recognize, I received a letter from Dr. Pat with her resignation. for September 31st.
No, it's 30th.
September 30th. There's not a 31st in September. September 30th, and I accepted that resignation. And I appreciate the time you have served on the APLS work.
Can I say something?
Yes.
So this is not personal. I want to thank Dr. Packer for her service to APLS organization. I appreciate that she recognizes the need for her resignation. However, I believe the APLS needs an immediate shift in direction. For that reason, I move or make a motion that the board pursuant to the authority under Alabama Code Section 41-8-3 terminate the employment of Dr. Pack effective immediately.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Motion carries.
And I wanted to say something. This is an awfully dark day for Alabama libraries and the people of that county who love them. Dr. Pack is being terminated not because of her performance, because of her tenure. State aid for local libraries is increased 60%. But she's being terminated as a result of unbanked attacks on her by extremists, including on this board, who believe she's not sufficiently supporting censorship, and who are not satisfied that their own local library boards can have the authority of what is in their own library. This action is going to be viewed in future generations in the same way that the civil rights era, forced resignation, and very, very dark.
I appreciate that. I will say it is incredibly important for any board to have a director that is implementing their vision and that they feel supports their work. I know that I have heard from multiple board members over the last 6 months felt like they were not given the perspective to do that. That they were treated negatively, and that they were not, their positions were not respected. And
Well, John,
I don't want to paint this as a, I want to be a peacemaker.
I just want to say one thing. I would like to just say, I'm livid. I would like to have a couple of weeks to get my office cleaned out. Permission to come clean my office out, permission to get my files in order for someone to clearly come in, and I won't pay for that. I can walk out right now and it would be fine with me because I have done a great job for this agency. And I hope the new director you get does not have board members sending in information to newspapers saying that old man Winter saved her. And as a matter of fact, we know which board member did that. And as long as you have board members like that, John, I do not want to work for this organization. And some of the things that went on this meeting made me realize libraries are no longer what they are. And I have no desire to work for APLS and to better the Alabama libraries. I've done my duty. 10 years, I've made them what they were. I've worked from state aid to 78 cents, $2.29. I've worked with legislators. I have legislators that respect me. I'm sorry some of the board members' feelings are hurt, but you have to have a strong leader in this position and a strong voice if you want to be heard. And that is what the board hired me to do when I was hired. And I appreciate your vote of non-confidence. And John, do I have permission to come in and clean out my office? It's going to take a while. I mean, I would like to get my files in order.
I mean, termination was immediate.
It's immediate.
Let me June first with council. Let's get together after we adjourn, you, me, and council, and we will.
John, we have discussed this, the termination is immediate if she'll be asked to leave today. Board staff, inventory, and pack up all personal items and set
Okay.
time.
All right, I'm done. Let's switch on to
Thank you. Is there any other business?
Yes, I need to make a second motion. I move pursuant to the board authority under Alabama Code Section 41-8-3 that the board appoints Kellen
I'll answer.
as acting director to begin immediately and to continue as acting director until such a time a permanent director is appointed.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any objection? Any objection? Congratulations or condolences. All right. Any other business before we adjourn? Hearing no other business, is there any objection to adjourning? Hearing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
She wouldn't tell us her age.
I'm a me, so, well, my grandmother used to say 39 and holding, so.
Do you do anything to celebrate today?
Well, I'm going to my daughter, we're at family.
I'm HR and payroll.
We're supposed to have 3 hours.